Someone make it make sense.
Probably a couple.
Hello, everybody. Look who it is on the screen. We got Turtleboy here scoring himself an exclusive interview with Ronnie, one of the jurors from the Kennedy trial. And Fender, shout out to Fender, specifically requested that I break down this interview. So I said, you got it. You know, always going to look out for the Squirrel Crew. Shout out to Twiz, also in the hizzy, Georgial Stick. Also to that end, Georgial Stick, bringing up, I was actually just doing a timestamp a second ago. I had time to do like another timestamp from a live stream recently for the Rose Petal murder trial. And I was just timestamping the part where Twiz found the bit about the lawsuits related to the child abuse stuff and the CP. And so I did some digging today, and that's going to be the second live stream for today. I've found all of the civil complaints. There's tons of litigation going on. We're going to go through as many of those as we possibly can. I looked and looked and looked, could not find Brad Post's criminal complaint. I wonder if it's not available because of what is contained within it. Because I wanted to break that down too. So if anyone wants to see if they can find it, but everything that I've found is just going to takes me back to the civil lawsuits. So, but we're going to break those down tonight, as well as there's a Fitz News, out of South Carolina. They've got several people there that have been attending the trial every day, and we're going to watch some of the things that they had to say about wrapping up the first week. And there's really some interesting insider information. I'm really, really, really excited to go through that as well with you guys. It's like, oh my God, there's just so much to talk about. So we're going to do that too. So hi, Denise. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Awesome. Happy to see you. Twiz doesn't like his new nickname / command. Blame Heather. It was her idea. Blame Heather. That's my final last words, if you will. Georgia Stick. Great. Just great. So yeah, it's going to be really exciting. Going through all that stuff too. And there's a lot of really interesting things here. I've seen bits and pieces of this. I haven't watched the whole thing. So, but from the things that I have seen, it's some really interesting things that the juror does say. So without further ado, let's just hear what Ronnie has to say. And also, by the way, I have to say, shout out to Turtleboy. Well, way to go scoring this interview. I've also put a link in this video's description for this original interview from his channel. So yes, mad props to Turtleboy on that.
I'm going to bring him on one sec. His name is Ronnie. Really nice guy. He's an EMT, and I'm just excited to have him on. I'm going to bring him on right now.
Alrighty. Isn't that interesting? He's an EMT, like right off the bat, an EMT. Awesome.
Hey, Ronnie, how you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good, thanks. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate this.
No worries.
Yes. So yeah, you were stuck behind a plow, I heard, on your way in there. Wasn't Lucky Locker?
Yeah, of course.
It wasn't Lucky Locker, was it?
Yeah. I mean,
No.
It's the snow, right? We're trying to beat the system, right?
Well, let me start off with that, right? There's actually an interesting video that I just saw come out that somebody took driving by 34 Fairview Road. And I wonder, have you visited 34 Fairview Road, obviously, on like the first week of the trial, right?
That's correct.
What were your thoughts when you saw 34 Fairview Road and the car parked outside, in the lawn? What did you think of the whole scene there?
It was surreal. I think it was very interesting to be able to see the atmosphere. It would have been nicer to see it in a little bit more with some snow, just to see what would that look like. But we were trying to observe the area and the environment at the time.
Well, funny you should mention that. So this is people love to do this. This is what somebody just drove by like an hour or two ago, 34 Fairview Road. And this is the perspective that 7 or 8 of the witnesses would have seen. And then John's body, of course, was later found right about here. Okay. And let me just ask you something right now, right? So they want us, the prosecution contends and the prosecution witnesses contend. I believe it was Matthew McCabe, Jennifer McCabe, Julie Nagel, Sarah Levinson, Brian Higgins, and two other, Caitlin Albert and Tristan Morris. They all drove directly by this spot while it was snowing at like between 1 and 2 in the morning. Every single one of them says that they didn't see a body on the front lawn right there. If you had seen this visual during the trial, would that have made it harder to believe that they could, if a body was there, that they wouldn't have seen it?
Yeah, I mean, it was very interesting because there were no pictures of what the body looked like at the time, right? So nobody took pictures of before.
Hey guys, so StreamYard just booted me. Sorry about that. StreamYard, can you guys hear me? Yeah, StreamYard just booted me. That's fun. Sorry. I was like, holy shit, how do I get back in here? Okay, we're back. We're back. Can you guys hear me? Let me know if you can hear me. Oh my God. Okay, great. You can hear me. Wonderful. I was saying hi to Fender and then it ruined everything. So Fender. Okay, I was just saying, Fender, love you. So some of you guys, we have some new squirrel friends that haven't met Fender, but you guys have heard me talk about Fender, namely when mentioning how I learned about what shipping was, and also how Fender is an amazing psychologist. So, so shout out to Fender, and Fender joins us from India. So love it. And also shout out to Candace. And I think Fender was asking me what time it is. It's 3:49 p.m. Basically, I saw your request to do this, and so I tried to get this scheduled for as soon as humanly possible after your request, thinking it would be a good time for you without being able to memorize all of the different time zones. So love you back, Fender. So, okay, that's that we are here and there it is. So excellent. You know, we need to do this real quick though, because we are professionals. Yep.
Looking at that, it's kind of hard to believe you can't see anything. But again, it's hard to say that you couldn't see it, and it's also hard to say that you could. I mean, it's all speculation in that respect. But it'd be hard, somebody who's that large, to not be able to see something there.
Right. So when we talked before, you said that you were one of 2 jurors who wanted to ask the judge, Judge Cannoni, about whether or not you were. First of all, do you confirm that it was a 12-0 vote for acquittal on murder and leaving the scene of an accident?
That is correct. So that was what
So
the
that's really important. So affirming that, right?
entire group agreed upon. That being said, it was confusing because we didn't have very clear direction on if it was all or nothing. In other words, if all 3.
I mean, what he's saying right here is literally what we all figured as much, right? I mean, how much we broke down those jury instructions ad nauseum. And, you know, I said, as well as many people, that might have been part of the issue here.
Convictions had to be 100%. So that's why the
made it sound like
response that it was that we were continued to need to deliberate because it was not clear on that one charge. So the one charge that we were not very clear on and not everybody was in agreement with was essentially the manslaughter charge, involuntary manslaughter. So that was the one that we were not clear on. But the other 2 charges, which was essentially second-degree murder as well as leaving a scene of an accident, was very clear. We all 12.
Which is odd, right? Because you would think that if they were conflicted, or if there's anybody who thought that she should be found guilty for the manslaughter, the leaving the scene part, right? I mean, that was the least severe of the charges. It's odd that I can't wrap my head around. I don't remember. I mean, again, we broke down the elements of all of those so much, but I don't remember what that said specifically at this juncture, covering all the other things I'm covering. But it still seems odd that they were all in agreement that she should be acquitted of that as well, right?
Agreed. That was not the case.
Where have you been?
Right, so
Right. And when did you guys start voting? So the first day you guys went and deliberated, it was closing arguments, right? And then you had like half a day there to deliberate. And then you came back. I don't know if it was, but you came back the next day. You had a full day of deliberations. When is the first time you guys took like a tally? And like when you said, okay, did you guys start with that? And did you say like, you know, let's see where we stand right now? Or how'd that work?
I think we wanted to read essentially the first day. We kind of took it all in. And after that, then we started to do a vote. We clearly didn't have a timeline, or I can't recall exactly the exact timeline on when we first decided on some of those essentially convictions. However,
so that's interesting. So what that says to me is, like, you know how sometimes you'll hear in certain trials I've heard judges tell, you know, when they're reading jury instructions and stuff, they'll say things like, you know, oftentimes jurors, you know, they decide to take a straw poll right off the bat. And we highly recommend against doing that, blah, blah, but we know that sometimes and oftentimes the jurors still do that. And what's interesting here is this sounds like to me that they did not take a straw poll, right? Because if they walked right in that room and the first thing they did was they said, okay, raise your hand, blah, that would be pretty memorable, right? So also I want to say it is freaking hilarious that Turtleboy puts his background as the house at 34 Fairview. I love that. That's amazing.
It was very clear that each time we made a vote, we wanted to make sure that we read the charges. So very clearly read the charges and understand the charges each time.
So to believe that Karen Reed was not guilty of murder, that means that none of you, even if they thought that she did it for some reason, not a single person on that jury thought that she did it on purpose, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so the whole motivation with about the Aruba trip with the Sullivan girls, and she's all angry. So that didn't really play well with you guys. That wasn't convincing.
It wasn't convincing. No.
Okay.
And there wasn't enough evidence for one way versus the other, but clearly not enough evidence, or there was doubtful evidence. So
okay. So you guys were hung on that second charge, and I believe the count, correct me if I'm wrong, was 6-6. Right, for a bit. And you were one of the 6 for not guilty on manslaughter initially, correct?
Correct.
And then came the Tui Rodriguez charge. And that's kind of like a, come on, guys, you got to give it your best shot, get back in there. And then that's when things, what was the atmosphere like in there? Was there bully sessions going on? Was there people trying to urge people that, come on, we got to do this for the O'Keefe family. They deserve some sort of justice. We got to do something.
I'm sorry, I just pause real quick. Y'all, we need to all be congratulating Fender because Fender's going into private practice for in psychology instead of, dude, Fender, mad props. Like, that's awesome. Love it. What I am all for that. I think you're going to be amazing. You've got this. You've got this. You are one of the coolest people ever, and you're going to be great. And then you don't have to worry about other people being awful and toxic, and you get to set your own standards and your own rules, and that is awesome. Welcome back, Carla. Happy to see you again. Also love that Carla's congratulating Fender. Okay. I can't, maybe that was such a long time ago. I just don't remember. I don't remember. When was that, Fender, when you put that in one of the lives? Also, Denise congratulating Fender. Love it. So much camaraderie here. The school crew is just the absolute freaking best. I love you guys so much. You know, we have the best group here, and y'all are awesome. So for anyone also who hasn't met Denise is a defense attorney in California. So just saying.
What was it like in there?
Yes. Fender.
It was deliberation. So clearly, one of the things that were happening is we were trying to examine all the evidence and looking into holes for the case, whether on one side versus the other. And ultimately, that's what led to some people swaying in one direction, and then some people remaining and standing their ground. Some people essentially remained and stood their ground the entire time. And I think that was, I think it's important to see that in terms of the justice system and having this 12-panel jury. I think it would have been one way or the other if it was left to a very small group or only a few individuals. But given the circumstances that it was left to 12 individuals that have to ultimately come up with the same decision, I think is a very good system as it is.
So it's a couple people changed their mind though. So there must have been some leaders in that room. Have you ever seen the movie 12 Angry Men?
So he didn't respond to what the juror just said. He just asked another question. And I understand it. He must have, dude, no one knows this case like Turtleboy, right? Y'all know. He must have all these questions he wants to get to, and I understand it. So I don't blame him for this. However, I want to respond to what the juror said, Ronnie, shout out to Ronnie, which is that I think that's really important what he said, because we know that there's oftentimes you'll have the petite juries, right? Where they only have 6. And so I agree with what he just said there. I think the 12 panel is super duper important, as they say. So.
Yes,
it's a classic. So obviously in that movie, Henry Fonda is very convincing. He has a strong personality, and he's able to sway 11 angry men to come to his side. So surely, like, the vote was 6-6, and then it went 9-3 for guilty. So I'm guessing there must have been some dominant personalities in that room. And who would you say that? Would you say the foreman was one of those, and an engineer? Is that correct?
I think a lot of people were strong in that room, in that they were opinionated, and based on their opinions and their level of expertise and what we were given in terms of evidence, that's how we ultimately arrived at that conclusion, or each individual arrived at that.
Okay.
I find it interesting that he said level of expertise. He said opinion first, which is interesting, right? But then he said level of expertise, and I think we're going to hear a little bit more too about some of the people who were on the jury. And I mean, right off the bat, right? What was the first thing I said? Ronnie is an EMT right there, right? I mean, it's like, when you've got people who have professions that overlap with what's going on in any given case, right? Then it can be really interesting, right?
I was going to say, you guys didn't come to a conclusion because you hung.
Correct.
And so it was 9-3, and you kind of wavered a little bit, right? Like they convinced you one way, and then like what you told me last time was it was 9-3, and you were kind of on the fence, and then you kind of came back, and there was 8-4. Is that an accurate depiction of what happened? Would you say it ended in 8-4 for guilty to not guilty?
I didn't even know
That's
it was President's Day.
Okay.
It was a holiday.
And
I did not know.
You correct me if I'm wrong. You told me that you and one other juror wanted to ask the judge, Judge Cannoni, whether or not you were allowed to acquit on two of the charges and hang on the third.
This is crucial. Let me back that up. They wanted to ask about this. This is crazy.
That's correct.
Okay. And you, correct me if I'm wrong, you told me that you and one other juror wanted to ask the judge, Judge Cannoni, whether or not you were allowed to acquit on two of the charges and hang on the third, and that the foreman said, no, we're not going to do that. We have to decide on, it's all or nothing.
So it was not a question of whether we can acquit. It was a question on, can we make decisions on each individual conviction independently of each other
individual charge
versus, so that was the question. It wasn't necessarily.
Right. So acquittal, conviction. Yeah. So like but you wanted to ask the judge, are we allowed to come to a decision on two of the charges and hang on the third? And the foreman said, that's not going to happen. No.
And it wasn't necessarily just the foreman, but there was a bunch of other opinionated individuals also kind of saying that, no, I think we have to look at it as a whole as opposed to independent. But clearly the person who was in charge at the time was the foreman. So his word or their word was more pronounced.
Because they shouldn't be afraid to ask those questions. The way he says more pronounced here, I feel like he's being really polite. Do you guys get that same feeling? He doesn't want to say bossy or aggressive or anything like that, right? And remember the jury notes with the way the foreman wrote those notes, I feel like he's saying that, and that's an understatement, because essentially, like he said, some of them wanted to ask the question, can we not make a decision on all of them at once as a whole, right? Blah, blah, and again, I blame Judge Bev, obviously, because the way she worded the way she read the jury instructions set it up to make it seem like that. And she made that abundantly clear that that was what they had to do, right? When it's not the case. And so you have the people who want to ask for clarification, which is a great idea. And that's what they should be doing, because that's a question of law, right? They have a question of law and they should feel like they can ask for clarification. And there are plenty of times where juries do that. However, because of other jurors, including the foreperson, who were so opinionated and what was the word? He said more pronounced, and I think he's being polite. Because of that, they basically conceded and said, okay, fine. It's a real shame.
Those notes that he would write, were those group efforts, those notes, or they were well written, obviously. A lot of people have talked about those notes.
And that's a great point here, that the foreman is supposed to be the first amongst equals. And I don't remember, do you guys remember if Judge Bev did that whole spiel, when judges talk about how the foreman is equal? I don't remember if she did or not. I don't know. Maybe one of you guys remembers. But yes, they in other words, that is the case. They're supposed to be. But whether or not Judge Bev said that, I don't remember. And it wouldn't surprise me if she didn't.
JC in particular looked at those notes, and he used the word charges plural. And that was a big this SJC cited that a bunch of times. He said that, we are deeply divided on the charges, he said. And did you guys come up with that note together, or did he write that himself, or did ChatGPT write it? How did that get written?
It was written by the foreman with in collaboration with all the other jurors. So we all looked at it. We all kind of accepted it as such. Again, it was one of the questions that we wanted to ask the judge was for clarification on can we look at these charges individually? But ultimately, that kind of question was put down, and essentially we had no choice but to just, again, based on the group, right, or majority rule, to say that we were just going to ask one question, or it's an all or nothing scenario, as opposed to can be treated individually from each other or independently from each other.
So Denise says here, when our trials hang, the judges will ask each jury their verdict on each count for the go. Right. I mean, and that's what obviously seems like the choice that they should do. They let them try to do it to get a verdict on each count. Right. And if they can't, then you ask them on each one. And so also I had a question here on the screen. Denise, you can answer this better than I can, but a question from DSN. Tough spot as a foreman. Are you supposed to get the jury to consensus or just speak for the jury at the end? So feel free to weigh in on that. I mean, couldn't agree more. Judge Bev only cared about getting down the Cape before traffic. Yep. A
lot of people would say that if they were in that situation and they were not being allowed to talk to the judge, they would say, well, too bad, they would make a bigger stink about it.
Right.
How did you feel about that? Do you feel like after this happened, do you feel badly for Karen Reed that, that she was acquitted? You were in that room. You guys all voted a bunch of times. And if you had just known, if it had been communicated to you better, if, you're not, the whole thing was just seemed like you're not professional jurors. That's the way one of the jurors put it, is like, I'm not a professional juror. It's my first time doing a murder trial. I don't know how this works, but I know we acquitted her, and this seems like a technicality. Do you think Karen Reed got the shaft?
Yeah, I think it's totally unfortunate because we just weren't well informed. And you're right, we're not professional jurors. We don't know how the law works. And it's kind of sad that, or unfortunate that we don't have that kind of view from an individual. So if we're in law, we would know how it's supposed to work. But from somebody who's new to becoming a juror or being a juror, we wouldn't know how the system really works. So it was very unfortunate circumstances.
And
so
the judge should have guided them through that. That's
just random question. I have so many questions, obviously, but one question is, you're obviously of Asian descent, and during the trial, there was one point where they were reading Matt McCabe's text messages out loud, and David Yannetti was cross-examining him, and he was reading them. And Matthew McCabe said something about like the Asian house. And I thought that was, I knew there was two Asian members of the jury. And I'm like, I wonder if they did that on purpose. Did that come across to you as at all offensive or anything like that? Him calling it the Asian house next door?
I think borderline kind of.
What's so funny? When that happened at the moment, I think we were covering that live at the time, and we were all like, oh my God, if there's an Asian person on this jury, can you even imagine? And so here we go.
I think it's borderline kind of offensive, but I don't think of it as offensive because I was born and raised here. So I think I looked at it as just somehow a descriptor, but I can see how some people would be offended by that kind of terminology.
Well, I think the defense was hoping you would be offended particularly by that. I think that's why they had him read it, is because they called it the Asian house. And I wasn't in the courtroom for that one because I wasn't allowed to be in there when Matt McCabe testified. But so I didn't get to see the reactions of the two Asian members of the jury.
Oh, two people were Asian.
So I wasn't sure if it landed or not. But you were there on obviously the closing day of closing arguments, and Brian Albert, Colin Albert, and Jennifer McCabe walked into court and sat with the O'Keefe family, and just the way they were positioned, they were staring directly at you. How did you feel about that?
It was a little intimidating. And I say intimidating, it was just at the end. I think we're all at that point where we want this to have some closure. And I think it was slightly intimidating to see everybody there and all the players there, to some respect. I wouldn't say so much that I was fearful, but intimidated by everybody staring at me, right? So, or looking at me, and I say me, but it really is the group, right? The jury.
Yeah, all 15 of you that were up there and sat through 3 months of this, and you didn't get paid. I mean, they didn't really pay you for this, like $50 a day or something you got?
Yeah, some small amount, yes.
So you gave up all this time, and God bless you, because it was hot sometimes in that courtroom, and it was a lot of the testimony was incredibly boring. I lived for this shit, and even I was bored by some of it. And I looked, and sometimes jurors were falling asleep because Adam Lally can just put you to sleep sometimes.
No kidding.
How do you feel about the fact that you gave 3 months of your life to this, and ultimately the result was nothing?
I feel that we kind of failed the system in that we were charged with this responsibility, and we came up with certain decisions, but at the end, it was not kind of looked at or taken into consideration in terms of some of the charges. And I think that was a failure of the system, and it is a disappointment. But that being said, I think it was a very good learning experience to be able to see the justice system. I wish that it had worked out for everybody and there was closure all across the board. But right now, there's no closure for the O'Keefe family and for the Reeds, right? Yeah. So there's nothing there.
So you are an EMT, which is such a unique job, it's particularly for this case. And at the scene, the EMTs were the kind of the first people to testify. And I think they interviewed like 8 or 9 of them. And 2 of them, no, I apologize, 3 of them testified that they heard Karen Reed say, I did it. I did it. I did it. If you came across a car accident or something like that with a dead body on the road, and there was a woman screaming, I did it. I did it. I did it. Would you tell the police what she said? Like then and there, and this woman's confessing to a crime?
I honestly would focus on taking care of the patient.
That makes sense.
And not necessarily focusing on that individual. That being said, if that individual was my patient, then obviously I would need to disclose that information to law enforcement. But at that time, if my
That's probably not the answer Turtleboy wanted, but I think that's a good answer from him there.
patient was Mr. O'Keefe, then I would focus on Mr. O'Keefe and his resuscitation first and foremost.
To be focusing on John O'Keefe's resuscitation. Yeah. So when they got there, the ambulance got there. They were there for about a couple minutes trying to resuscitate him, and then they immediately put him on a gurney, put him into the ambulance, and got him out of there. And you must have come across fatalities many times, I'm guessing. I mean, God bless you. I don't know how you guys do it, but I'm assuming you've seen too many dead bodies. When that happens, you've come across car accidents, I'm assuming, many times too?
Yes.
Okay. So what is the protocol? Like, what would the protocol in a situation like this be? Do you think that the police and the first responders handled this in a way that you would expect it to be handled? Like, not as far as not putting crime scene tape up or anything like that?
I don't think it was as coordinated as it should be. And I don't know if that's a fault of necessarily each individual or a problem with the system, in that maybe they didn't have the proper training, or they should have asked more resources to actually make sure that it was done well. But I have to admit, it does not seem like it was done well in any way, shape, or form.
So are you qualified to look at, like, a person's body after they're deceased and determine cause of death? Is that something you're familiar with as an EMT, or is that not something you're trained to do?
That's not my forte. I'm not necessarily, all I know is based on what is provided to me in terms of evidence, but I'm not in any way, shape, or form a educated person on pathology.
Sorry, Blackwitter's picture though, your new picture, slay. Like, look at that. And your hair is a different color. You look gorgeous. I mean, you always look gorgeous, but what a killer picture. You guys.
Well, luckily, there were 2 experts provided by the federal government from a company called ARCA that testified. 2 doctors were the last 2 witnesses to go. And in order to, they both testified that, according to the physics, the science and the physics, the injuries to John O'Keefe are not consistent with being hit by a car, and the damage to the vehicle is not consistent with hitting a pedestrian. And so those guys are, doctors, PhDs, they do this for a living, etc. And in order to find Karen Read guilty of manslaughter, you have to listen to the ARCA experts and say, I don't believe them. So how did 8 jurors reach the conclusion that those guys didn't know what they were talking about?
It was as a direct result of Karen was there at that time.
This is crazy.
And John was there at the time. And it was believed that John died there, therefore, right, at that location. And therefore, it seemed like, and everybody, all the witnesses were suggesting that he was never inside the house. And as a direct result, the assumption, or if you connected the dots based on the evidence that was provided to us, it seemed like there was some sort of collision with the car, and therefore there was damages to the vehicle. And with the damages to the vehicle,
that's not your job. Is damages to the victim, right? I mean, damages to the vehicle, again, remember, that could have happened from anything.
And that both individuals were there and present, that the cause must have been, or somehow some sort of involvement by Miss Read. So that was how they all arrived at.
But how did they reconcile? Was the ARCA testimony brought up by the people that thought that she was not guilty? Did they? I'm sure somebody in that room must have said, but these experts are telling us that that's not possible. And what was the answer to that? Like, did people say that that these guys are bullshit artists, that they're fake doctors? Like, what was the reason not to believe them?
Great question.
I think the major rebuttal was, we don't know. And that was the other thing. It was very ambiguous on why these individuals were testifying. And so there was a question in the group on their essential integrity, in terms of, were they there as a direct result of somebody else trying to steer us in a different direction and confuse
the
jury. So
I find that really interesting. That to me sounds like people came in with a bias. And here's why. Because why would any of these jurors think that the job of the defense team is to confuse them or to distract them? Right? Like, you hear people saying that in these different trials, and you'll see people saying that, like, in live chats, right? Like, oh, they're just trying to confuse the jury or distract the jury or whatever. And, like, but that's coming from people who have a bias. So that's why that bothers me so much that he's, I'm not blaming him. It doesn't sound like he was in this group, right? But that there's any of these jurors that thought that, right? That should have been sussed out on voir dire, because why would they're told they're supposed to keep an open mind and listen to all the evidence, right? Like, and they heard the opening statements. I mean, there are times where that is a strategy from defense attorneys, right? Like, there are times when in certain trials that I've seen where the defense attorneys don't even really try to hide that. They're just going to like poke holes here, and they're going to add confusion. And that's the whole thing. But clearly that was not the case here, because they had a whole theory of the case, right? The whole third party, you guys know, which is a whole separate issue in terms of how effective that was. But regardless, what you didn't hear from the defense ever is we're trying to confuse you or distract you. What you heard was we're telling you the truth, and the Commonwealth isn't. So the fact that despite all of this, there were jurors who still thought that blows my mind. And it makes it seem to me like that was their idea coming in, and that nothing would have changed their mind. Yeah, the 3 flights, I wish I could remember. That was weird. That was weird. I don't remember what all the specifics were about that, right? I mean, I can tell you just from my knowledge with the phones, right, that it doesn't necessarily mean stairs, right? It's just it's trying to measure a difference in height. For example, if you were to and maybe, I can't remember if this came from the trial, if you were to take your phone and maybe toss it up really high and then it came back down, I don't know, that might register a flight of stairs, right? So I don't know. Yeah, I know for sure he's dying inside. Yep. Jurors. I know for sure. Yeah. Yeah, but does anyone else remember the specifics about? I mean, I remember that was picked apart about the data with the whole thing with the stairs and other things that could cause it. I remember there was something about the hill. But we did have a scroll friend in the chat at the time, Dr. Bob, who lives in Massachusetts and has served as a foreperson on a jury twice, and it has a doctorate in physics. Okay, we talk about what a lucky person to have in the chat, right? And he'd driven by the house, and he said that the hill was really minimal and that it was made to sound like it was a big deal. I recall him saying that the thing that made a bigger impression on him was how curvy the road was, but that the hill was not steep. Do you guys remember him saying that as well, for those of you guys who were there? Okay. That's funny. Great.
It wasn't sure if it was insurance. It wasn't sure if it was, whether the Reeds were doing it, somebody else was doing it, or yourself was doing it to bring this group to try to testify.
This is crazy.
So that
why would they think Turtleboy was doing it? Again, the only thing they should have known about Turtleboy was his name came up for just a split second from Jen McCabe. But it had to do with she said she was doing that whole poor me thing, blah, blah. But there's no reason why they would think that Turtleboy could have been involved for those experts, unless they were looking information up like they're not supposed to. This is awful.
It would sway the jury in one direction or the other. And I think that was one of the things that was, again, unfortunate, because I guess it cannot be said or didn't want to be revealed to us on what were the circumstances of why those individuals were testifying, other than they were testifying for the defense.
Because now obviously now that the trial's over,
and the thing that sucks is the thing that we were all thinking at the time, right, was oh my God, this is the best case scenario, because you've got these experts who are completely unbiased. That never happens in a trial, right? They're not hired by either side, that they're coming, and it was this is it. This is the best case scenario. And it's crazy that despite all of that, the jury still figured that they were, if anything, it sounds like they found them even more, or even less trustworthy, right? They because of the fact that it was an unnamed third party, that was even more sus than a defense hired expert, which has been bizarre. It's opposite day.
They're not even defense experts. They're FBI. They were available to both sides, and only the defense called them. But it seems like the conversation in the room went and they said some people were suggesting maybe they were the insurance company, of course, because of course an insurance company would benefit from not having an automobile collision. Obviously, they wouldn't have to pay anything out. Or
and honestly, the attorney who was in the group, right, should have fixed that right away, because this is a criminal trial. Why would the insurance company? Are they getting it confused with like a car accident in a civil case? Like, unbelievable. I mean, maybe the people who are saying this were the people who came in with a bias and they're just trying to find any reason to make other jurors discount their testimony. That's what maybe it is, because it doesn't make any sense logically. I think that either way you slice it, there was definitely bias coming in. And I think either way you slice it, clearly there was people doing outside research in order to mention Turtleboy. But I think that the only reason that these other words were used, like suggesting Turtleboy or insurance, there must have been jurors who were giving their testimony a lot of weight, because obviously, and that this was their way of trying to convince them not to. That's what I think.
How did people thought I paid the ARCA guys? That's wild.
Like anybody, somebody was trying to, again, to try to sway the jury in one direction versus the other.
I'm not that powerful, I promise you. I can't afford those guys. But so that's basically the reason that they came up with. They said they heard all their testimony, and then they said, nah, those guys are just probably paid off by the insurance company. Right. We're going to disregard everything that they said.
Right. Because the people who thought that, I guarantee you, were the people who didn't want to believe, were the people who realized that the case is over, right? That the ARCA guys just shot the whole thing down from the Commonwealth. And so the people who said that, I guarantee you, were the people who had some sort of a bias coming in.
And one of the other reasons is because there was the other testimony of the individual from the dog bite expert and all of the other things that the defense was trying to bring up, that again, wasn't sure if it was just to try to confuse or sway the jury in one direction versus the other, or create a jury which was
so everything that the defense presented is just, it's just confusion. And that is saying that there's an assumption that the Commonwealth is telling you the truth, which I don't understand. Again, even if you come with a bias, if you watch that trial, how? Even if the defense didn't present a case at all, how? When you saw the Commonwealth case, when you saw the solo cups and all this stuff, like how? How do you think that they're the ones that are giving you the truth? There's literally no way to explain it unless it was an excuse because they were actually biased. That's all I can think of.
Created reasonable doubt, and therefore the vote had to be in one direction versus the other.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that some of the jurors in the room were saying that all of this defense third-party culprit thing, a dog biting John, this is all bullshit. This is all a smokescreen, and all these people, this dog bite expert they're bringing in, this is all a distraction from the fact that Karen Reed ran John over. Is that an accurate portrayal of what people were saying in that room?
What about this? What about the shoveling of the apron? What about the basketball game? What about the trip to Aruba? What about the high top tables? What about the snow? I mean, if anybody was distracting anybody, it was the Commonwealth trying to distract from the truth. It's the opposite.
That is correct.
Wow. Okay. So in order to believe that Karen Reed killed John O'Keefe, you have to believe that, and that John O'Keefe didn't go inside the house, you have to believe all of the McAlberts who testified. And so am I correct in saying that they found the McAlberts to be convincing witnesses and truth tellers?
Can't be.
Correct. And I will say that that's to some respect.
Of all of the things, that might be, I mean, there's a lot that's shocking here, but that might be one. Again, I feel like that can't be, maybe that's them lying, because again, like literally all of the things that were the strongest things for the defense and like the worst things for the state or the Commonwealth, it seems like these certain jurors are saying the opposite of that, right? And so it's like, yeah, we believe the McCabe's. Like, oh, what? We're talking a great deal of bias in order to, I mean, because honestly, I can't even wrap my head around it, man.
Not only say it's correct, but also to some respect, because there were some individuals who just looked at the facts. Again, the clear fact that Karen was operating a vehicle and drove the vehicle to that location, 34 Fairview. Mm-hmm. And then ultimately John O'Keefe lay at rest and died on essentially that address. And so everybody else is saying that he never entered the premises, therefore she must be at fault because he clearly did not just injure himself there. So
did anybody suggest that maybe the McAlberts are not being truthful, that maybe he did go inside. I mean, I assume somebody in the room, the not guilty voters, must have said that these people are lying, obviously. And what did people say to that? I mean, did some people believe at least that they weren't being honest?
I think the individuals who believe that she was not guilty was because of the mere fact that it was not adding up. So the injuries to John O'Keefe ultimately did not add up to the damage to the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And what ultimately injured him was, or led to his death, was a injury to his head, which was not very clear that that type of damage could have occurred on the vehicle. And there was no damages on the vehicle that would indicate that kind of situation. So for those who were skeptical, that's what they were looking at.
Yeah, the Commonwealth alleges that John, that his arm.
Wait, I'm confused. I need to hear him say that again. Wait. Is he saying, hold on.
Mere fact that it was not adding up. So
okay. He's reiterating what the people who thought not guilty thought. So that, because I was like, oh, that all makes sense, right?
The injuries to John O'Keefe ultimately did not add up to the damage to the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And what ultimately injured him was, or led to his death, was a injury to his head, which was not very clear that that type of damage could have occurred on the vehicle. And there was no damage.
It was clear that it did not, but yeah.
On the vehicle that would indicate that kind of situation.
Correct.
So for those who were skeptical, that's what they were looking at.
Yeah, the Commonwealth alleges that John, that his arm, I still can't believe they said this theory, that the arm was out and that the arm is what caused the taillight basically acted as a knife and just sliced his arm up and then caused him to spin and then land 30 feet on the grass. And the gash in the back of the head came from hitting the grass, which they said was so hard that it somehow caused a gash in the back of his head. People really believe that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think a lot of people in the room, some people who were experts in science, right, and physics, or have some knowledge of physics, necessarily believe that as the case, given the circumstances that it was not very clear.
Mm-hmm.
But again, some individuals just believed at the circumstance that Karen and John were there at the same time, and John ultimately was killed.
And the text stream data is what you mentioned.
Look at his face smiling. You can tell that he thinks that's silly, but I respect him a lot for not speaking ill of the other jurors, right? He's being very polite, but you can tell that he's like, yeah, that makes no sense.
A lot last time, and you said that was what the guilty people really stuck to, was the text stream data. What was so convincing about the text stream data for them?
It was a combination of the speed, and suddenly there's an increase in speed and a decrease in speed, consistent with maybe somebody backing up, and so that, looking at that, was kind of convincing that she must have accelerated in a backwards motion, and then
even though that 24 miles an hour in reverse 62 feet thing, there was no time associated with that. It was measured in what's called key cycles.
Yeah, that was
and
bullshit.
They couldn't explain, like, at least they didn't say for sure, like, this happened at 12:32. For all we know, that event could have happened at another time or another place, because they didn't give us a time. But people were pretty convinced just based on that alone that, yeah, that's proof positive that it happened at that exact same time.
I think it was a combination of, again, the circumstance that both individuals were there. There's evidence of a broken taillight, the injury to John, and the injuries that John sustained. And then ultimately, that texting data was just another piece that indicated, yes, there must have been some movement. It was very interesting, though it wasn't very clear. And I think I said this last time, that it would have been nice to have somebody who is an expert in that, or somebody who has knowledge of that type of data from that company, right, from Lexus or whatever company, right, and to provide some information on if that can be accurate and what causes it to actually occur. So, for example, like I was saying,
literally, we even said that. I even expected somebody to come in from Toyota, and then it was like, no, you just get Trooper Paul, who can't find his way out of a paper bag. So,
or I was thinking, like, right now, as I'm driving home, right, my car could have slipped, and that could have triggered something, right, to suggest that maybe that will make a trigger that I'm driving kind of erratically. But it's not because of me; it's because of the ice and the snow on the roadway.
So what he's saying right there is he's a good. This is what I'm saying. I think he was a good juror, because what he's saying is reasonable doubt. In other words, the Commonwealth didn't prove that the speed, the acceleration was because of backing up in a certain fashion or at a certain time. What he's saying is there's other explanations for this. That's reasonable doubt.
Causing that to occur, which we all know that during this time frame, that's the type of weather that was being experienced by Karen during and all individuals, I should say, during this time frame.
So if the defense had an expert from Toyota or whatever that could explain, like, is there anything that could make it look like you went a certain velocity and you really didn't? Maybe your tires were spinning, maybe the RPMs were up. That would have been a good witness for them to call.
I think that would have been helpful. That was definitely would be a helpful piece.
Okay.
Well, also, the thing is this.
Let's talk about reasonable doubt.
If the Commonwealth thought that that data would have proved their theory, they would have called the expert from Toyota or Lexus to explain it, right? That's the thing. Like normally it seems like that, like that's an expectation that we have, right? Like I expected that. I expected, like when Trooper Paul got there, was like, I don't know what the fuck this is and I don't know anything and blah, blah. I was like, oh, well, yeah, I expected the Commonwealth to bring in the person who could read that shit, and they didn't. It's crazy. It's crazy.
When going back and listening to it all, you know, the defense gave you this story about what they think happened, how John O'Keefe went in the house, he was beaten up, and he was left outside to die on the lawn, and then Karen Read was framed there after the fact. All right. And what I didn't hear much from the defense in their closing arguments was about what reasonable doubt was. Did you guys discuss what reasonable doubt was in the jury room?
Because I just mentioned,
you know, was that made clear what that was? Because how, you know, some of the things that you're saying right now is reasonable doubt. Even the arguments that Karen Read, from the people that believe Karen Read is guilty, you know, they're making arguments for reasonable doubt. Did you guys understand what reasonable doubt was?
I believe we did, and that's where we kind of essentially got stuck, is because I think that's why it ended up as a hung jury, is because we kept rehashing that second charge, in that some of us felt there was enough reasonable doubt and some of us did not. And not that we're trying to coerce anybody or try to convince anybody to vote one way versus the other.
But did they understand what reasonable doubt was?
I think everybody had a clear picture of it. That being said, I don't know if everybody wanted to vote in a particular way based on the reasonable doubt.
Crazy.
Now you obviously were not sequestered, but you were like not supposed to go home and watch any of this, consume any of this.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if other jurors were. I'm assuming if you weren't, and even if you were, you probably wouldn't tell me, at least not on the show. So assuming that everybody actually followed, you know, that order, you know, they didn't read up about this case, et cetera, while this was going on. Do you think that, I mean, is it even possible for a case? Like, how do you guys do that? Like, how do you go home every day and not turn the TV on and not have bias when it comes to this story during this trial? So
it was very interesting because we tried, or it was one of those things where you do what you're asked. And I think it was a honest and trustable jury in that we all followed the rules, which is,
I mean, he's giving them these, well, he knew them. He knows the jurors. I don't know the jurors. I was going to say he's giving them way more credit than I would. I would say that because of the obvious inherent bias that some of these jurors have, I don't know that I would call them trustworthy or that they're following the rules, because the rules are to listen to the evidence, right? But yeah, I'm just remembering this now. Things are coming back to me as far as it being hard to go backwards at 24 months. I remember learning at the time, I can't remember if it was somebody in the chat, but like somebody in the chat had looked it up, and like I can't remember what the specifics were, but like they looked at like the different like records for like being able to go backwards, and it's exactly right, like what Fizz is saying, which is basically like even going backwards at like I don't know, it was something close to 24 miles an hour, where if you did that, you would be like a paid stunt driver, and like the record is not even a whole lot more than that type thing. So, you know, again, speaking to, there's some other thing, like maybe there's there's issues in those systems, right? You know, you get those recall things in the mail all the time, right? A faulty part, or, you know, something with the ice, whatever could have triggered it, you know, so.
Not to watch TV, you know, diet from that, diet from reading the news or any of the tickers, and not pay attention to those things. Or if something were to come up, we were required to report it as such, that we had some sort of interaction. But like I said, most of us, I should say all of us, were pretty good about it. And we just, dieted from the news and the media.
That's
all right. So I'm sure a million people have questions. So I'm going to read some questions that we have from Turtle Writers in the chat here, because I'm sure there's a bunch. Okay. Our first one, this is a $10 one from Jay. And again, if you guys are going to write them in, keep them brief. I will not read your freaking paragraph questions. So keep it brief. So how do you overlook paramedics' omission of possible, this is from Jay for $10, possible vehicle strike in the report narrative? The radio report to the hospital and the other report are both available to be examined, and would have been two opportunities for this medic to have reported document if it actually happened.
So I think one of the things there is it would have been nice if that was all documented per se. Again, the jury is limited on what we are actually able to see in terms of the documentation. So we are only given a certain piece of the documentation, and majority of it is based on the testimony of the individual. So the individual can read the document, or they need to read the document and then kind of say it out loud to the jury, and that's what's provided to us.
Next question here. This is a random one. Lem sends for $50. Long time, first time. Could you please ask the juror if they ever followed Turtleboy, Olivia Lambo, or Joe Flipperhead? Do you follow any of those accounts on Twitter? Did you follow Turtleboy before any of this? You probably know who I was. That's okay.
Sorry, first time to learn about any of those, and in fact, first time I learned about Dr. Turtleboy was when I got contacted. So
well, thank you for respecting my pronouns. All right. So do you haven't, now that the trial's over, have you consumed any of this, or you just went back to your life like whatever?
I think, as at least for me, and I believe the majority of the jury, we all wanted to just go back to our normal lives, and we haven't really followed much of it other than knowing full well, just occasionally, that it was a hung jury, and that it's probably going to be retried, and we know that it's being retried, and we know the date. But I honestly have not gone and searched anything or researched much.
I wonder if they keep in touch, because a lot of juries do that. I hope he asks that question.
Of anything in terms of the case, because I lived it.
Do you think if the defense had been allowed to mention that there was a federal investigation into the investigation itself, and that the FBI paid for those ARCA experts to be there, would that have affected the outcome of the trial?
I believe that it would definitely have changed. I believe most likely would have changed the hung jury, or made it more unanimous of a vote, so it would be easier to kind of look at, and they would still ask us to continue deliberation because it would just be a few individuals left.
Next one here. This is from $30 from Dawn. Could the juror confirm if the jury slip was the updated version requested by Alan Jackson, or is it the one that they never updated? Did you guys get confused by that?
Yeah, so we got two different slips. The first slip that we got was updated and changed. I cannot recall the exact date or day that we were given the new slip, but we definitely were given a new slip that was updated charges and updated verbiage.
Okay. This is from Kim for $10. Says, what questions were you asked of when you were chosen as a juror? Good question. During the voir dire, when you guys were called up in your little conference there with the judge and the attorneys, what were they asking you? What questions?
Each individual is different. I think the major question was for me is that would I be biased in any way, shape, or form because of my medical training, and so that wouldn't overlook the evidence and have an opinion and have a bias as a direct result of my medical training without looking at the evidence entirely, and kind of, do I have a bias versus or against or for law enforcement?
Really? Who asked you that question? The Commonwealth or the defense? Do you remember?
I believe it was more of the defense.
Okay. The defense asked you if you had a bias towards law enforcement?
Okay. I believe it was the defense who asked.
And you said you were just indifferent, whatever. Because if you said, yeah, my dad's a cop or something like that, you'd be the first one on the cutting line. If you said something like
I don't know. Maybe perhaps I tried to be honest, I tried to get out of it. I actually
really?
thought I was just going in just the first day. I didn't even know what the whole thing was until at the end when they were starting to select us, what was going on. But I thought it was just going to be a regular jury.
Were you there April 16th, the first day of juror selection?
No, I was there on the second day, on the 17th.
Okay, the second day. They picked 7 that day. So that's interesting. And so you went into that, and you must have seen crowds of people outside. Were you like, what the hell is this? What's going on here?
Yeah, I actually didn't realize what we were being selected for and what was the case until it was read to us by the judge. But essentially, I thought I was going to go in my typical jury duty, go in there and spend like maybe a few hours and then get out, be able to have lunch and have the rest of my afternoon, as opposed to the other way around where I was there for a little while for a full jury selection.
Next one is for Mackenzie. She sends $5, and she kind of asks my question about the reconstruction experts, FBI, etc. And then she says at the end, like, how she says, because I don't understand how someone could take Officer Paul's reconstruction seriously and disregard the 2 defense experts, because he was the only one that was the expert that explained for the Commonwealth how John O'Keefe got hit by a car. Did jurors actually take him seriously? Did they think his testimony went well?
Again, I don't think necessarily they were looking, or we were looking at one individual for their testimony. We kind of looked at the whole picture, bringing it back to the circumstance that somebody is dead, and those 2 individuals that came to that household or that address, one of those individuals is dead and the other individual is alive. Ultimately, and there's damage to the vehicle, then that individual must be responsible for
that
injury.
That is completely bonkers. And again, he's making that smile, right? Like you can tell he's like, this is insane. But I appreciate that he's not throwing them under the bus. He's being very polite.
So like, her dropping him off there and whatever, like that's not proof of anything, right? That's
right.
That's, God forbid, like I hope nobody else ends up in a situation where they drop someone up of a house and then they end up dead. And it's like, well, you dropped him off, so you obviously killed them. But you mentioned the taillight. That's the only real physical piece of evidence that they had against Karen Reed. However, was it brought up during deliberations that the Canton police searched the scene at 7 a.m. with a leaf blower and they videotaped it, and they didn't find a single piece of bright red taillight on the snow, yet they found 45 pieces over the next few weeks? Was there any discussion that perhaps taillight might have been planted?
There were some individuals that were definitely stuck on that and believed that was reasonable doubt, but there were some individuals that believed that it made a bit, again, just circumstance or happenstance, that maybe there wasn't enough snow at the time, and therefore now ultimately now the ground is covered and therefore you couldn't see the pieces because it's covered, but prior to that maybe now you can see it. So,
well, it would be the opposite, because when the Canton police got there at 7 o'clock, there was 3 inches of snow on the ground, tops, maybe 4, 3 to 4. And it's a lot of taillight, right? And they had their leaf blower out, and they have a video of him finding these transparent pieces of cocktail glass. Paul Gallagher finds them. So they were able to find transparent pieces of cocktail glass, but not all that red taillight. Was the general consensus that the Canton police are just completely incompetent? Wouldn't they have to be if they didn't find any taillight? Was that the consensus?
True.
I don't think that was the consensus. I think the consensus was just, again, they looked at all of the overarching evidence, not just that one little piece. So individuals looked at everything and said, nope, that's not enough to say that created reasonable doubt.
All right, next question here is from Melanie. Sends $10.
Basically, again, it's what we're hearing from is there were people on this jury that was like, nothing's going to change my mind, which that's what they said in the note, right? But we were all like confused. I mean, again, it just comes back to it's just clear there was a lot of bias going on with those people, for sure.
Did he see the footage of Alan Jackson in court arguing with the judge about how the confusing juror forms were? And what did he think of that? Did you guys know that battle was going on inside the courtroom?
I do not know of that in particular. I never saw the footage, but I understand that it was very confusing. And again, unfortunately, it's a fallacy in the system that it wasn't clarified for us.
Yeah,
that we could
fallacy in the system. This is what he's saying is super important. I hope they do something about this.
That each individual charge independently of each other.
Okay. Natalie sends $5 and says, "What arguments or comments from guilty jurors led you to temporarily change from not guilty?"
So to not guilty, I
From
think
not guilty, from not guilty to guilty.
not guilty to guilty. I think ultimately, again, some of us broke down because it was very clear. They clearly displayed that both individuals were under the influence of alcohol at the time, and therefore should not have been operating a vehicle. So the operation of the vehicle, and that is that second charge, which is involuntary manslaughter as a direct result of operating a vehicle under the influence of alcohol. So that is what a lot of people kind of swayed on, that yes, they shouldn't have been operating the vehicle, and it's not murder too, but could it be that she operated the vehicle negligently and therefore led to involuntary manslaughter? So that's where there could be a sway.
So it was the fact that she was, admittedly had. So I would say, so the testimony from the police about she had 4 drinks here, that was very effective, obviously, because ultimately they said, well, she was drinking and driving, so she
So was everybody else. Ugh.
I think it was not only that, but the video footage of the drinks that she was having was very strong in leading to that kind of opinion and thought process.
Okay. Even though the rest of them were also drunk. I mean, everyone was drinking and driving, including the police, and that didn't bother anyone else.
Yeah,
I think it bothered everybody, but ultimately we have to look at who's being charged here, and the individual who's being charged was Karen. So unfortunately,
that's a great point. I agree. They should also be charged. I agree. Bring charges forth against all those fucking fuckheads.
Nobody else was being charged with it. It was just Karen. So therefore, Karen must have been, and both people were there during that same time frame. So
that's interesting that you say that, because, and I've long argued this, that being in the defendant's chair.
We're supposed to be getting a bunch of snow here as well, guys. Some of you guys are talking about how cold it is. I've seen other people talk about snow. We're supposed to be getting hit, I think, on Thursday.
Already losing. You're already losing. You're already down 20-0, something like that, because you're here. You've been charged. You probably did it, or else you wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, no.
You would argue that the fact that she was charged at all and sitting in that defendant's chair and no one else was charged is pretty. That people were suggesting that was pretty solid reason to vote guilty.
I mean, that's a great question, because literally what that is like assumption of guilt, not assumption of it. It's the opposite. That, oh, well, she was charged and they weren't, so clearly she's the one who did the murder.
I believe that it was a combination of, so theoretically anybody, right, should be considered innocent until proven guilty.
Yes.
But here they displayed clearly, the Commonwealth displayed that she was under the influence of alcohol, even though there was no breathalyzer per se at that exact time frame when the incident occurred, right? It was after the fact. But based on the evidence of the receipts and the video showing that she was under the influence of alcohol and then operating the vehicle, that would be easy to kind of charge her with involuntary manslaughter, operating a vehicle under the influence.
So I have a question here from another juror. Is actually from the one of the jurors who was not chosen to deliberate, and I'm getting a message from them now, and they said this is the quote. Did the jury ever discuss to a moral certainty as part of the reasonable doubt discussion, or would having an attorney in the room have been helpful?
So this is from the attorney.
Because I believe one of the jurors who was, randomly chosen not to be in the jury was an attorney.
Interesting.
So would it have helped to have an attorney in the room describe what to a moral certainty was? Was that discussed at all?
I think having that level of expertise in the room would have been helpful for everything, including the fact that, number one, that all 3 charges could be looked at independently, and somebody who has that level of expertise to clearly indicate to us the moral certitude of reasonable doubt.
And the thing is, it's it's so messed up that they felt like, okay, that certain jurors were maybe a bit, I'm going to use the word maybe bullied or opinionated, right? But to where the ones that wanted to go ask for clarification from the court, they got basically shut down. That shouldn't be happening in the first place. But in lieu of that the issues that they had with, if they could go charge by charge, what again could have completely been solved had that attorney been allowed to deliberate. So, it's just
okay. Because they went on to say that when we refer to moral certainty, we mean the highest degree of certainty possible in matters relating to human affairs. So obviously, this discussion didn't even take place at all. You know, what a moral.
So I won't say that it didn't take place because we read that statement multiple times to the group. I don't know if it hit home to the group more so if that individual was there to provide that level of expertise.
Okay.
So if somebody was there to provide that level of expertise, I think it would have been more realistic. Or
I'm not worried about the snow. I have no problem with the snow. I lived in Boone for all those years. We got snow like 7 months, 8 months out of the year, maybe more. Like the only months that it would, I think there's only 1 month on record that it's never snowed, and it's August. Yeah, I was just commenting because people are talking about it, and some people, like in Greensboro, people do freak out. I don't freak out. I have no problem. I can drive my Prius in the snow, no problem at all.
tangible to the jury or the group rather than not, because although it was read multiple times, and I will say that we read it multiple times.
Why do you hate snow?
And I was one of the individuals who was reading it multiple times. It clearly may not have made an impact or have been as impactful as if there was somebody with that kind of experience and that level of knowledge.
I just have to say, I really like Ronnie. Shout out to Ronnie. I really like him a lot. I appreciate and I applaud his maturity and his approach to this and how diplomatic he's been. I think it's great.
Coincidentally, she happened to be one of the 2 names chosen out of that box on the last day. And, there was, when I was watching the testimony of these people, there was 3 jurors in particular, all women, who were making visual representations with their facial reactions that they believed that that Michael Proctor was an asshole and that the Commonwealth was full of shit and that Kennedy was clearly innocent. And coincidentally, all 3 of those people making faces were all chosen on the last day not to participate in deliberations.
Alan Jackson, same thing.
Did you guys did you guys ever talk about this before you started to deliberate? And what was it like the moment that you went in that room? Like, what's the first thing people said? Like, okay, so let's get this over with, or what do you guys want to do first? What was that like?
We actually didn't. So in terms of just going into the room before deliberation, we really didn't talk much about the case when we were, other than a couple, comments here and there. And even when we were, when we were together, we were not really deliberating or talking a lot about the case. But we did definitely talk about the case during the deliberation process. And we tried to figure out where to start. I think ultimately we came up with looking at all the evidence and looking at the video files, looking at the pieces of evidence that was provided to us.
I have to just do this real quick because he's just referencing that evidence here. Where is it? Where is it? There it is.
There's no evidence of anything in this case.
There you go.
And we kind of looked at all of those over the course of the time frame that we did our deliberations.
This is from Kelly. If Chloe bit, you must have quit for $10. Says, I want to thank you, Ronnie, for coming on to stand up for what is right in the name of justice. What was the biggest thing that caused you to believe in her innocence or that there was reasonable doubt?
Ultimately, what made me sway back to reasonable doubt was, yes, she was there and he was there at the same time frame. However, the injury that ultimately causes death was inconsistent with the physics of the damage to the car.
Absolutely.
And the other piece that causes death was the hypothermia. So those 2 pieces, which was presented to us, was the basal skull fracture.
So he's saying like this, unless you're going to charge the snow with second-degree murder or the cold, right?
To the back of his head, and the hypothermia was inconsistent with the damages to the vehicle. And so ultimately what I also thought about was that he was the one who kind of, and I'm not trying to put blame on him, but he ultimately was the one who was insistent to try to go back and go to this place. So 34 Fairview, he was the one who kind of programmed the GPS to that location. And she was the one who was asking to just go and have something to eat. Granted, it was a pizza place that was closed. She wasn't really looking to go drinking anymore. At least it seemed like it. He was and continued to party. So not trying to put blame on him, but it doesn't seem like she is at fault of whatever ultimately came about at 34 Fairview.
Because she just wanted to go home and eat food.
That's what it seemed like. It.
Right. Okay. All right. Next up, this is Nicole for $10 says, "Hi, Ronnie. Thank you so much for your bravery coming on Turtleboy tonight. In your opinion, do you think there's any possibility that one of the jurors who were firm on guilty could have ties to the McAlberts and thus already knew that they were going to try to vote guilty going into it?"
It's possible. I mean,
the question that Fender specifically wanted me to make a note for her of, and he said it so far. He said it's possible.
it's a small world, right? So who knows? I can't say that's speculation.
I'm just reading the question. I'm like,
oh, good. Look at him. He learned from trial. He's like, that's speculation. Funny.
I don't really like that question because I don't know how you're supposed to answer that, but they gave it a shot anyway. All right, next one. This is B for $10 says, this is a question I like. Would access to transcripts of trial helped change the decision or help you guys deliberate?
Yes, I think it would be helpful to see all of the transcript. It also is what people sometimes don't understand is the jury wasn't allowed to look at whatever was objected versus sustained in terms of there was some overrules that were there. So those had to be scratched out. That's why we had notebooks. It would have been nice to know ahead of time how long it was going to go, and we should have probably organized our notes a little bit better. So we did take notes extensively, but it would
at the time. I can't remember. I feel like did we know that at the time? I don't remember at this juncture if we knew that at the time or not. My thought would have been that they weren't allowed if I just had to guess based on everything. But do you guys remember? Or was that known? I guess I feel like people in the gallery would have seen that and. Maybe that came out and I just forgot because it's been a while.
Would have been nice to have access to those transcripts to actually look through certain things as well. I don't know if it would have changed it ultimately, again, because of the unclear direction of the charges. So if we had better direction as well, I think we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. And I think the trial would have been done last year.
Right. Romy sends $50, says, "This is amazing. Thank you for speaking, Ronnie." People are very happy that you're willing to come on and talk, and you're not, good. I appreciate you coming on because this is nothing wrong with this. And I hope more jurors do this and talk about what happened. Are you worried about this? Were you nervous about coming on here at all? Were you apprehensive? Because when I asked you, you just said, sure.
At the time when you said it, it wasn't anything of a problem. And then as it got on, I was like, what could happen? But now talking, I think I feel relieved that I'm talking and letting people know the story. I think the story is important for people to understand and also to still believe there is, hopefully at the end, right, a good justice system and it works out. Because otherwise, if you look at it, she would have been imprisoned and because of what happened. And clearly it may not have been the right choice. So I think, right, we will just have to let the next jury make the decision.
Let me ask you something.
He wanted to say the right decision. He wanted to say that.
Not express any just general distaste for Karen Read, because I've said this before, and I think Karen Read's biggest obstacle that she faces are the facial reactions that she makes in court. And I think some jurors, I know that one juror who was dismissed actually was dismissed because she made a comment to other jurors about Karen Read's facial reactions.
Absolutely.
Did that come up at all in deliberations?
Yeah,
Karen
absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. For sure. He has all the connections and, he has done a lot for this case and we wouldn't have this interview were it not for him. So for sure.
Read's facial reactions in court.
I think not only her reactions, but other individuals' reactions. I think it was interesting because we all kind of focused on certain people or certain things inside the courtroom. And there was family members' reactions, other individuals' reactions. But in terms of her specifically, I personally did not kind of put any kind of qualifier or quality.
Well, we know you didn't, but were the guilty people, did it seem like they just didn't like her, the drip of her sail, the way she looked, because she's not a typical murder defendant. She comes in court, she smiles, she makes faces, she doesn't cry. Did that rub some people the wrong way?
I think it probably solidified it for some, based on some of her reactions to what was being said or what was going on in the courtroom.
Okay. Do you believe that Brian Albert butt answered his phone while having sex with his wife at 2:22 in the morning?
Great question.
I find that very hard to believe. But Anything's possible.
Yes, and just asking. That was to me. Wow, I see a bunch of people bringing that up in the comments. But okay, next one. This is from Denise Tuttle for $10. Says, does this juror think she was framed, and has anything he's learned since the trial changed his mind?
So I think there's a lot of bias in the investigation, and therefore it's hard to go in that direction of, I think it created enough reasonable doubt in my mind that she was not guilty. Whether she was framed, that's a different scenario. But again, a jury would look at it and say that she's not guilty based on reasonable doubt. So,
well, if Cameron Reed is not guilty, then by definition, she had to have been framed because all that taillight got there, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So it's just interesting. So it seems like in this situation, you either had to believe the McAlberts were honest or you didn't. And did the Google search come up? Because this Google search was what ultimately got me hooked on this case. That 227 Google search that came back as deleted. And then the deleted phone calls from Jennifer McCabe to her sister at 6:07 and 6:08, and Brian Albert not coming out of the house, etc. Did you guys discuss the behavior of the McAlberts and how suspicious it was?
We extensively discussed why was the first person to go to the house, approach the house, was member of the family, you know what I mean? And then the other pieces of the Google search, we don't know. And again, there was not an expert in the group necessarily that could talk about it with enough knowledge on experience, and that if those Google searches can track to the exact timeline and time frame and backtrack. So right, we're not really sure about that, but we looked at it and said it's again maybe just distractors.
That's what the consensus was, that the 227 Google search was a distraction.
Again, kind of distractor. I think some people were set at the very beginning that based on the evidence that they had seen so far, and kind of combing through some of the evidence, they kind of looked at it and said, you know what, both individuals were there at that particular address. One person was operating the vehicle under the influence, and another person is now deceased.
Wow. All right, next question here. We have, this is from Not Man Shannon for $10, and says, if the defense took the time in closing to go over the jury instruction and relate each piece of evidence that establishes reasonable doubt to each jury charge, does Ronnie believe this would have helped the jury vote not guilty? I think we've kind of asked this already.
I believe that it would have probably been helpful to be able to have more of the data and clear instruction. So clear instruction, I think, would have ended up changing the scenario in terms of two of the charges, because we clearly said those two charges were essentially not guilty, right? So those two charges would be not guilty. The last charge, or the second charge, which is the involuntary manslaughter, I think if we had a level of expertise to ascertain reasonable doubt more tangibly to each individual in the jury, and a better explanation, then perhaps I believe that we would have been able to deliberate and go in one direction versus the other.
Yeah.
This is from Joan for $25 and says, knowing what you know now, what is your opinion regarding this case, and if you think he was hurt inside the house?
I think he wasn't injured by Karen in her vehicle. Where he was injured and who injured him, I don't know. And I think that's what law enforcement should be looking at, is trying to figure out. Unfortunately, it's been such a long time ago, but that's what that's the mystery, right?
Yes.
If you invited
but it doesn't seem consistent.
If you invited someone over your house after the bar, and then they ended up dead on your lawn 6 hours later, would you expect the police to search your house?
Well, unfortunately, if that were the circumstance, regardless of who it was, I would believe that law enforcement would comb my house and potentially go to each neighbor and interview each neighbor, and more testimony from neighbors and other individuals would have been presented. I don't know if that was just dismissed because they didn't think it was relevant testimony by the defense nor the prosecution. But I think it would have been important to have interviews of the neighborhood or individuals, including a search of my house, because it's even though it's my house, you know?
Yeah. No, it's funny you mentioned that, because across the street, and this was not even brought up at the trial, across the street, the deputy, or the lieutenant, I believe he's like a deputy chief now, named by the name of Tom Kelleher, from the Canton Police Department, lived directly across the street from the McAlberts at, I believe, 31 Fairview.
No, I think
And he has a Ring camera. And I actually knocked on his door one time as part of my investigative journalism. He didn't answer. And I stood where the Ring camera was, and I kind of pointed my camera out of the street. And lo and behold, it captures directly where this incident would have occurred if Kara Reed ran him over. If the defense had presented Tom Kelleher as a witness, and he had said that, you know, the police never asked for his Ring camera video, would you find that suspicious as a juror?
Of course. I mean, it would be also suspicious if there was no recording, or there was supposed to be a recording and then suddenly it got lost.
Oh, look at him. He's smart. He's like, I'm on to you, Commonwealth. I'm on to you, right? He's like, I saw that Lollyport video. I was there.
And that's happened a couple times too, I believe.
Correct. In the course of the
Yes.
court.
I bet.
Yeah. And didn't you guys, what did you guys think of the inverted video
Yes.
that was shown in court? Did you think that was on purpose? Did anybody think that was an
It
accident?
was definitely confusing because we all kind of thought it was on one side of the vehicle versus the other side. They were all on the right side versus the left side. And ultimately, when we realized it was inverted, it could be a honest mistake, but it's kind of hard to make an honest mistake when you have to work hard to invert a video, right? I think
You're right.
it's not common to create a copy and then invert it.
Yeah. It's just, why would they do that if it was an honest investigation? You know, but again, next up here, this is from Jessisa for $5, says, thank you for your service, Ronnie. Could you talk about the notebooks? What happened to them after the trial? And did the state police have any access to them or anything like that?
Oh boy.
Sorry, can you say that again? Yeah, you kind of cut out for.
Oh, sorry. Your notebooks that you guys had. What happened to them during the trial and after the trial? And do you know if the state police had any access to them?
So in terms of during the trial, after each day, the court officers would collect our notebooks. So we were not able to take them home or write any more notes or look at them when we went home. When we came back the next day, again, it'd be available to us, but we would never have them available in the secluded area where we were. It was always only in the courtroom so we can write notes in the courtroom. At the end, during deliberation, we were provided all those notebooks. We do not know. All we know is it was kept in a secured area by the court officers, but we don't know if the state police or anybody had access to it other than the court officers.
Okay. This is Nicole for $10, says, hi, Ronnie. There were several medical professionals on the jury. There's obviously you. The foreman was a physician's assistant. There was a nurse who was one of the not guilty voters. How did they justify John's injury with a motor vehicle accident? And, you know, as a nurse, so this person's a nurse, and they say, as soon as I saw the autopsy photos versus the vehicle, I immediately knew there was no way that he was hit by that vehicle. So I do know that one of the three solid that never wavered on not guilty, one of them was a nurse. Was she vocal about that? Because nurses are unanimous. Every nurse I've ever talked to is like, no way. Did the nurse offer her input a lot during the deliberations?
So the medical group was pretty vocal in terms of looking at the injuries based on our experience and seeing that it seemed inconsistent with the damages to the vehicle, and therefore
medical group, because
that the vehicle was not what ultimately, the vehicle strike was not ultimately what caused the death of Mr. O'Keefe. That being said, we couldn't figure out what caused those injuries. And I will say the medical group was trying to convince the entire group that the injuries are not consistent to the damages to the vehicle.
So the nurse was trying to convince people, like, look, I'm a nurse, guys. I see this all the time. That's not consistent with motor vehicle collisions.
He's saying the whole medical group, not just her.
Correct. I think we were all kind of saying, no, that is not consistent based on our experience on the damage to the vehicle and the injuries that Mr. O'Keefe sustained.
All right. Next question here. We have, this is from JJ, sends $10. You said you guys came to the conclusion, or that some jurors came to the conclusion, that she hit him because she was there, he was there, and there was some kind of collision. If the defense did a better job at explaining that he wasn't hit by a vehicle, would that have changed your thoughts? Or if they focused on John sustaining injuries inside the house instead of from a vehicle? I don't understand the second part of that question, but I guess my question that will go along with this is like that. Do you think that they focus too much on the conspiracy aspect of what happened and not enough just on, look at, dude, there's no way this guy was hit by a car because that's what the science says?
I think that would have been helpful, because really causing creating the distractors, whatever distractors that may be. Like he went inside the house, he got injured inside the house. There was the dog that bit him. There was, injury in the weight room downstairs. All of these became kind of like theories and confusing or distractors to the jury. So ultimately, they just looked at the facts, and the facts were there's damage to the vehicle.
That's interesting. Here's why I think that's interesting. Because we heard him say, I commented earlier about the thing about confusing the jury and the distractors, and that was, we heard that about the jury in reference to the Arcadudes and Dr. Russell, right? But it's interesting because now with hearing him say it about all the other, alternate theories and whatnot, like I'd forgotten about the weight in the weight room and all that shit, but I remember that. And and there was the buttress, what was the weird name for that door thing, the buttress or whatever it was called. Anyway, I can see, and this is really important, right, for the next trial. I can see how, because they heard all that stuff first, right? So if you think about the very beginning of the whole trial, and early on, they were hearing all these things that were hinting at, like, an alternate theory, and there was a lot of different things. I can see then how, and this is unfortunate, right? How then when it becomes the defense case in chief, and now you've got the Arcadudes and you've got Dr. Russell, that could support, oh, it's a distractor because look, they did it before with this other stuff. I can see, well, the takeaway here is the stuff that you don't need to prove, right? Like the weight room and the dog bite and all that, potentially led to people discounting then the most important evidence of all, which was the Arcadudes, right? And like we heard it from his mouth. By the time it got to the Arcadudes, they were like, yeah, it's just a distraction. They're just trying to confuse us. And that is a shame. And that's the point, right? When you've got such a solid actual case and you take on that burden of trying to prove other stuff, it's like not only is it burden shifting, but this is a whole other element to it, which is like when it comes time for the actual experts that matter, the jury has already just, or it's not everybody, but some people are already not going to give them the credibility they deserve. Everybody is grateful for this interview, right? But if anyone, the people who should be the most grateful are her defense attorneys, because I really hope and I'm sure they will, take this to heart, because that's the big question that a lot of us have, right? Is what are they going to do in the next trial? Are they going to still hammer home, or try to anyway, as much as they'll be allowed to let in the alternate theory,
So a simple look at it is two individuals were there. Somebody was operating the vehicle under the influence. There's damage to the vehicle. It's a broken tail light. There's injuries to John O'Keefe, and now he is dead. Then who's ultimately at fault? The operator of the vehicle.
You keep saying distractors, and that's what they were arguing. But their entire defense is third-party culprit. So are you saying that not the most effective defense? If you were coaching their lawyers for the second trial,
good question,
would you say that isn't that as effective as you guys think it is?
I don't think it's as effective. I think it would have been better to focus on the evidence that the state is trying to promote, and focus on those and show the holes on those, or create the reasonable doubt based on those pieces of information. So, for example, have an expert other than the individuals that were there who could actually talk knowledgeably about the physics of damage to a vehicle. I understand the ARPA group, but somebody else potentially, or clear indication that this is not a distractor. I think having those individuals testify at the end, after all the other distractors, that's
what I just said. Oh my God.
Expert on animal bites. And then also the little pieces of distraction there that was created might have not helped the last person.
But the last two to go were the ARCA guys.
I think if the ARCA guys had gone before the distractors, I think it would have been better, because then it would have been more solid that, the physics is not there.
Yeah. And then the thing is, of course, they couldn't have, right? Because that was the defense's case. And, but that's exactly what I was saying.
The damage to the vehicle, and then introduce other explanations that may have caused the injuries and caused his demise.
Okay. Next up, this is from Colleen. Let's see. She sends $10. She said, did the jury complete verdict slips? Thank you for doing this, Ronnie. We kind of went over that already. So thank you, Colleen, for your donation. Melissa sends 10 and says, what did the jury think about the believability of Trooper Paul's testimony, especially when he was asked basic physics questions he couldn't answer? What do you guys think of him?
So I have to be honest. I think some of us couldn't help but laugh, and I don't know if it was heard or discernible.
Yeah.
And we kind of laughed and kind of chuckled as he was providing some of his testimony. No offense to him,
No,
but
offense to him, it's
he wasn't able to provide basic physics. And for somebody who's supposed to be a forensic expert in that reconstruction, then theoretically he should have known some of that information, and he didn't. So we did not look at him as a credible individual. At least I did not look at him as credible in terms of his testimony, but nobody else kind of gave a very clear indication of how the damage could have occurred to the vehicle.
Yeah, that's all they had. They said Trooper Paul was the one guy, and I mean, I couldn't believe what a disaster he was about. It just did. He said, like, that's how the phone got under it. It just did, and I couldn't believe that.
Yeah,
but,
it just did.
What do you think? Do you think that Jen McCabe? This is from John, since $5 says, what do you think of the Jen McCabe how long to die in cold at 2:27? Real quick. I mean, that obviously didn't seem to get brought up much.
I think it was very interesting if it did occur at that time frame, why she'd be looking that up, and that creates suspicion.
If it occurred at 2:27, it would make sense why she looked it up.
Oh, no. I'm just saying, I know why she looked it up potentially then, but I think people were wondering, could it have been possible that was an error, right? That, because that's what the testimony was, that if somebody was looking it up at 6 o'clock and they looked up something that was kind of similar at 2, then it may pull up that she looked at it at 2 when in fact she was only looking at it at 6.
So what you're saying is the Commonwealth's witnesses therefore sound like they were effective because they put doubt in your mind that maybe Jennifer McCabe didn't do that at 2:27.
Right. I believe that it was effective enough that it created reasonable doubt.
Okay. Adam Lally did something right. Okay. But the irony...
No, Turtleboy's misunderstanding him. Do you guys see that? Turtleboy, he's saying it created reasonable doubt. All right. Or maybe he's being serious as in Adam Lally did something right because he created reasonable doubt. Maybe that's what he meant. Okay. All right. Yeah, no, he's being sarcastic.
Of that is that ultimately who that creates doubt for is not Jennifer McCabe, because she's not the one on trial.
Right. Okay.
That creates reasonable doubt for Karen Reed, because if you think there's a possibility Jennifer McCabe might have done this, then that in and of itself is because if we all agree that if she did it at 2:27, that there's a conspiracy here, correct? We all agree with that.
Correct. It seems like there's something going on there that should have not have been going on. Why would she be looking that up during that time frame?
Right. So it just seems like the conclusion that the jury reached, that, you know, a lot of these people, well, we don't know if she did it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it actually happened at 6:24. But that in and of itself, not knowing, that's supposed to benefit Karen Reed, you know, because if there's any chance that Jennifer McCabe did that, then that's reasonable doubt in and of itself. That wasn't really discussed, I'm guessing.
No, again, there was kind of dismissed given the circumstances. They were looking at the bigger picture, which was pieces of the evidence that was overarching.
Speaking of pieces of evidence, Annnnnd for $25 said, did anyone believe the taillight could have been planted?
I think people were thinking it, and that's why we looked at the timeline. We took a long time looking at video on what time the SARF team actually got there.
The CERT team, yeah.
Right.
Because you guys asked for that. You asked for the CERT team report. That was one of the questions.
Because we wanted to look more in detail of what the report actually had. Unfortunately, that wasn't provided to us. We didn't get that report. But essentially, we wanted to see some more specific timeline to try to narrow down if there was any possibility that somebody could have broken the taillight from the garage and then kind of brought it to that location prior to the team getting there.
And you were unable to do that because they did not provide you the CERT team report because there was no report.
We were actually we kind of looked at it in terms of timeline based on the trooper's testimony. And then because like I said, we took notes. So some people were taking notes of timeline there, and we were writing down times. And then the video of the car being towed from their house her dad's house and then bringing it to Canton PD.
Because it was towed at 4:15. The CERT team search began at 5:45, and I think most people would agree that's more than enough time to get the car from Dighton to Canton, and so it is mathematically possible to do that. Now, what you did not know, what was not brought to your attention as a jury, was that during the pretrial phase of this, that Michael Proctor's report initially said that the car was towed from Karen Reed's house at 5:30. If the car was towed at 5:30, we all agree not enough time to have taillight planted, and they changed that later once the Dighton
Ronnie, yeah, no, I do. I love him. I think he's great.
Police came forward with the police
Ronnie.
report showing that the car was towed at 4:15. The Commonwealth abruptly changed their story, and they said that's a Scrivener's error on Michael Proctor's part, that it went from, oh, he meant to put 4:15, but he actually put 5:30, so we're just going to erase that and put 4:15. If that had been brought to your attention, do you think that would have affected how jurors felt just about the truthfulness of the Commonwealth?
I think the more holes that are put into the prosecution's testimony, then it would again lead more to a reasonable doubt. The only other thing that would have been nice is, and we all know this, whenever somebody gets towed, the tow operator is supposed to make sure that they kind of document damages to the vehicle so that they can't be kind of responsible, or can kind of make sure that, you know, they can document any damages to the vehicle. So that would have
even think about that. That's a great point.
Been also helpful to have that tow operator, his documentation provided.
Well, and I expected, did he testify? I don't remember. I would have expected, if he didn't testify, I would have expected him to testify, but of course they didn't do anything normal in this trial. Do you guys remember if the tow truck operator testified or not? But yeah, regardless, he's right. Like the documentation. Yeah.
To us, so that we knew that the damages to the tail light was not as significant or as significant as what was reported.
I mean, why? Right? No, because of course not. Right? It's like because watching it live, I'm sure I expected that, and then just like how I expected that somebody from Toyota, right, to come in. But anything that makes more sense to like following things linearly, how they go in trial, it's like they just don't do those. So yeah, okay. Meg says she doesn't think he did either. Yeah.
I used to do Valley Park, and every time we caught a car, we were required to go around the car and make note of any scratches, dents, anything like that, because we don't want somebody saying, oh, you dented my car, blah, 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 blah. And I'm assuming tows do the same thing. And I've asked the same question. I don't know the answer to this. I don't know why the defense or the police wouldn't have brought the tow truck driver forward and asked him about the condition, because surely they must have taken some sort of notes on the condition of her vehicle when they had it towed, but we'll see. This Lori sends $50 and says, how did the jury feel about Jennifer McCabe's search for How Long to Die in Cold? We've been over that. Thank you very much, Lori. I appreciate that. Sage for $10 says, after the trial being over, hearing and seeing other things, do you still feel you are that it's not guilty because of reasonable doubt, not guilty because she's innocent and didn't do it, or guilty?
What?
I would say all across the board, I would vote not guilty.
Do you think she's innocent?
Yes.
Okay.
Well done.
Laura sends $10 and says, do you feel your notebooks were safe?
Ronnie gets 1,000,000 squirrel points. Shout out to Ronnie. Excellent.
Being read after hours?
I believe in the integrity of the system, so I would believe that it was safe. What would they glean from the notebooks? I can't imagine either group would glean anything other than what was already known.
This is from Anonymous for $5 and says, what did jurors think about John's arm injuries? Do any of them have dogs? That's a good question. Did any dog owners speak up and say, I own a dog, I know what dog bites look like, those are or are not dog bites?
So there were some dog owners. We did look at it. It did not look consistent with injuries from a tail light per se, but we couldn't say specifically it was from a particular type of dog, if that is the question.
So Dr. Russell didn't convince you, or Dr. Sheridan?
A little bit of convincing. I think it became suspicious when, again, it was brought to light that she volunteered her services.
So it sounds like Turtleboy is trying to ask for Ronnie's specific opinion, because he said but Ronnie's answering it. He's so cute. I love it. He's very smart. He's answering it as in the jury as a whole, which I appreciate, right? Versus like, here's my opinion, right? You know what I mean? Like, so anyway, hopefully it's not getting lost in translation for Turtleboy here.
After seeing an article. So that was kind of suspicious again, for the group.
Another point for Lally, I guess, because Lally brought that up and said that I guess Lally's not as incompetent as I thought he was, that because he definitely brought that up and he said, well, how did you find out about this? You guys just So that line of questioning worked. Interesting. Okay. This is from Tasha, says $5, says, did the jury instruction say reasonable doubt goes to the defendant? Making any reasonable doubt means not guilty. I think we kind of been over that already. What the whole reasonable doubt thing. Thank you. Kathleen sends $10, says, what were the jurors' thoughts on Proctor's testimony and your thoughts on Michael Proctor?
I
Wow.
had to give him a little bit of credibility, but
Wow.
not as right.
I'm
I wouldn't dismiss him like
Turtleboy's face. Watch. I did the same thing here.
Thoughts on Michael Proctor?
I had to give him a little bit of credibility, but not as right.
It's like, what? Because Ronnie is so reasonable, right?
I wouldn't dismiss him like Trooper Paul. Gave him a little bit of credibility until
okay.
some of the text messages
There
started
we
to come
go.
out.
There
So as
we
soon as
go.
that came out, that's when I think he lost all credibility and integrity in the group. So the entire group was just appalled at his behavior. Initially, it seemed like, I mean, you look at it and these individuals are public officials that are given authority, and we believe that they have integrity and they are right there to serve and protect. But it seemed like there clearly he took advantage of somebody who was vulnerable at that time. And there was some sort of abuse of power, for lack of a better term.
And what was not brought to your attention, because they couldn't bring it to your attention, is that the only reason we found out about those text messages, it's not normal. Normally, you don't get to read the lead detective's text messages on his personal cell phone. We only know those because the FBI gave them to both sides and said, here are this guy's text messages. But again, you couldn't have the FBI brought up at all. So how would you know that? So that's another thing. Let's see. Nikki sends $10. It says, was anything ever marked on the verdict slip? Did you mark not guilty on 1 and 3 and leave 2 blank?
We actually did not mark any of the slips, unfortunately, because I think we were thinking, again, it was all or nothing, and that we couldn't.
That was the way we covered it extensively, guys. Exactly the way Judge Bev read those jury instructions, the way she worded it was exactly that. You couldn't mark anything.
Submit the slips independently of each other. Had we, I think it would have, again, changed the case and changed the decision of the SJC.
Marissa sends $5, says the jurors actually understand that the prosecution has to prove their case, that they couldn't just speculate. It sounds like there was bias against the defense, that they put experts in the stand to lie and confuse them. How did you feel about the defense attorneys?
I think the defense attorneys did a reasonable job. I think the only problem is that, again, problem with the system on clarification of how to come to a unanimous decision, and the clarification on the different, each independent charge can be treated individually and independently of each other.
Jessica sends $50, says, what did he think of John's injuries and what did the jury say about it? And what did they make of Jen's testimony? So we've already, again, there's going to be a lot of repetitive questions, guys, things we've went over. If we've already addressed this, I'm going to thank you for your dono in this, but I think we've kind of already addressed all of this, right? John's injuries and what you thought about them.
Yeah, so, they were pretty inconsistent with injuries.
Meg, I do know. Thank you for asking this question. Is it true that Karen Reed just asked for Sandra Birch more documents? Absolutely, it's true. And I've got, I know we still have to cover all those documents. I was complaining to Twiz the other night. I was like, oh my God, I'm trying to find all these documents. And it's like pulling teeth, guys, to get the Karen Reed documents. And there was a big dump, or I think there was like 2 of them actually, like last week, right? And there's like so many documents. And they're the way you get them is it's like 1 page at a time. And it's just, I mean, it took forever. And I still haven't gone through and organized them. It's like a nightmare, basically. That when you see other people cover them, they've got moderators or other people that go out and get them and put them in order. Although I say that sometimes you'll see that some of them will be like, oh, this page is out of order. But anyway, it's a whole thing, and it sucks. It shouldn't be like that. But anyway, all that being said, I have them and I've been meaning, we still need to go over them. And I meant to actually say that at the beginning of the stream, like, hey guys, I haven't forgot, I've got all these documents, but like this was a request from Friender that we watch this interview. So that's taking the priority. And they're going to be having the hearing tomorrow. And the other thing, I think the motion to dismiss, I think, is also due tomorrow. Tomorrow also, of course, being day 5 in the Rose Petal trial, where the defense will begin its case in chief. I'm so excited, guys. The stream I have scheduled for 8 o'clock for anyone who missed it. Oh my God, we have so much to talk about. I'm glad we kind of had, I had forgotten that this was a holiday, or I didn't know, as you guys know. And like, so I thought there was gonna be court day. I'm kind of glad we have a breather, because there's a lot more I want to talk about before we head back in to see what's going to be coming up next, because it's really interesting. So, but yeah, so we will cover those. But just to answer this question, yes, they did ask for the Sandra Birchmore documents. It's in one of the motions to compel discovery. Because obviously a lot of the same law enforcement officers are involved in both cases. So, oh, well, hopefully I just answered that question. Sam, do you know who Sandra Birchmore is, Twiz? That's the first question. Do you know who she is? The biggest thing with that was Trooper Guarino with the phone, right? Because of the way that Trooper Guarino manipulated the text messages. I always forget his name, which is fine. The dude the cop in Sandra Birchmore who got her pregnant and all that, right? I always forget his name. But anyway, whatever it is, it's like thousands and thousands and thousands of text messages that he just like didn't see, or whatever the case was. I think that was a big part of it, because of the fact that he did the cell phone stuff for Karen Reed's trial. So, oh, thank you. It's due the 21st. Okay, thank you, Meg. Holly also. Oh, right. Farwell, that's the name of the dude. Right. Thank you. Well, okay. It's more nuanced than that, right? It's impeachment material, right? It's to diminish their credibility, just like with every trial. That's what they do with the law enforcement, right? They want to show, like, hey, this dude clearly, you can go many routes. You can go the dishonest route. You can go you're a complete asshole route, like Michael Proctor. You can go you're an idiot route, like Trooper Paul, right? Dishonest. I mean, and in this case, a lot of times you can pick one officer and you can go any of those, because all of them would be applicable, right? Highly unusual. So, I will say my impression at the time watching the trial was when Trooper Guarino testified, I don't think I knew about anything with the Birchmore case, or at least I didn't know. I didn't know of the same officers being involved. I think I'd heard of the case, but anyway, I remember saying that Trooper Guarino, compared to the rest of them, seemed like the least bad. And I think I said the same of Tully. Like, I didn't know though, right, of their involvement in Birchmore's case, but I was like, yeah, compared to like a Trooper Paul and a Trooper Proctor, right? Like, and a Brian Higgins, like they're not on that. I mean, but it's a low bar, right? And so that was my just impression at the time. And so you can see why it's like if you take a look and it's like, okay, the only people in law enforcement testifying for the Commonwealth, the only people who didn't have anything presented that completely just, blew them up in front of the jury, right? They blew up Trooper, we're not going to hear from him again, but like, then there's Trooper Proctor, like they've got all of these guys, right? It's like, if they can bring in something that then can, diminish the credibility or destroy the credibility of the other two witnesses that, from law enforcement that seemed somewhat not terrible, you know what I mean? Then like, you've just blown up the entire thing, maybe, you know what I mean? So, and that's true. Now that's true. They do think that, but they can't get into the FBI, right? That's not why they're asking for it. They can't bring up the whole thing with the FBI in the trial, right? As we know. So while that is true, I mean, I think that's a known fact. I mean, that's a known fact, right? That's why there's the FBI investigation, but that's not why they're asking for the discovery. No, I think I just answered that. Yeah. That's why there's the overlap, right? That's why the Arcadudes exist, right? But for the Birchmore case, we wouldn't have had the Arcadudes, right? Crash daddies. But yeah, the discovery they want, I think, pertained especially to with the phone with Trooper Guarino. And you can see why that's so important here, right? Because we heard that they're actually getting more from her cell phone than what they had before or whatever. But like with the cell phone stuff, right? Again, it's not just to diminish that law enforcement. It's to diminish the credibility of the law enforcement officer who did the phone extraction and is testifying as to its contents. And then you hear, oh, but look, either he somehow, oopsie daisies, I don't remember how many text messages it was exactly. Meg, do you remember? But it was some crazy thousands and thousands and thousands of text messages, right, of communication between the victim and the law enforcement officer. It's like either oopsie daisy, how did you just miss these, right? Or you did it on purpose. Either way, you've just destroyed that witness if you can bring that up. Well, right, but okay, they did, but they couldn't say they're from the FBI, right? So they did bring in, yeah, right. They did bring them in, but the jury, didn't know. They were not allowed to get into it. Thousands, like 30,000, right? Okay, yeah. Yeah, so like he somehow missed all those text messages. Yeah. And he's the one who did Karen Reed's phone extraction, so.
He's as a direct result of a pedestrian struck.
Rose sends $10, says, did the jurors have any thoughts on the waterfall video?
The waterfall video, I think it was very interesting. One of the first pieces, or some of us realized it pretty early on, that John O'Keefe was the one walking outside of the waterfall with essentially a glass.
Right.
And that glass that ultimately some people were saying was broken, and
Sorry, a shout out to Brother Nagel for that. That's what I called him Brother Nagel throughout the trial because Laura, said that one time when he couldn't remember his first name, and then he called him Brother Nagel. And so anyway, I call him Brother Nagel as well. That's a good point. I'm glad you remember that. Yep, when the opening of the door. Oh, what else was I gonna say? God damn it. Oh, what was it? I was gonna say something else. Oh, maybe I'll think of it.
But was left on the lawn of 34 Fairview.
Did you guys discuss at all? Did you notice that Brian Higgins, towards the end in that video, is very aggressive and appears to be yelling at John O'Keefe from across the bar? That video has been analyzed a lot.
We've looked at that video a lot during deliberation as well.
Oh, you did?
Little pieces in terms of where were people sitting, who were the last individuals out. The one that really caught our eye was at the very end, like I said, where John was walking out with that glass. So some people looked at that as, okay, he had the glass there. And ultimately, that's the piece of glass that they were showing as evidence.
All right. Did the jury think the picture of Karen's car outside Meadows from the well-being check showed the taillight intact or broken? Do you even remember that question? At 8 o'clock, the cops went there and they got a picture of the car. The taillight appears to have part of it missing. Do you guys remember that part?
I remember that part. It's kind of interesting. We wish that we had more conclusive kind of evidence in terms of did somebody take a picture of that? We didn't really see that it was as damaged as when ultimately we saw it damaged at one point. For some of us, we believe that it just might be coincidental.
What he has said so far about the drinking glass is ostensibly, right? Like in terms of what's come up so far is the question about how with the different pieces of taillight, how they were able to find the pieces of glass in the snow, but not all the pieces of taillight until they came back for subsequent trips. That's, I think, the biggest thing that happened early on in the interview. The magic hair, they have not gotten to the magic hair yet. Although for anyone who missed it, I did a test on this. I remember it was summer, so nice and warm. I did a test on the magic hair during the time of this trial. I made a video of it. I was looking at what height the taillight would be on a person, using myself as an example with my car, and like just showing like where that would hit. And then also I did a test with the hair and tried to make it as similar as possible to duplicate it as best as possible to what happened. And it's a short little video. It's not a live stream, it's just a video. Although I played it on a live stream, but you can find that under videos if you want to watch it. But I will say that even though obviously the conditions were different in some respects, the hair did not stay on the car. Okay. And in fact, it came off the car way sooner than I would have thought. So anyway, I did a little experiment with that. Who taught Twiz? I don't know what you're asking. I think maybe you didn't watch. I don't know. Yeah. George will stick. Do you know? No, are you confused? The tow truck guy did not testify. That's what we were all saying. They should have called the tow truck guy and they didn't.
And again, looked at the bigger picture of both individuals were there and one was operating under the influence. Somebody's dead. Somebody has some injuries, broken taillight.
Do you remember the testimony of Dighton police officer Nicholas Barros at all?
Yes.
Oh, that was
Do you
great.
remember what he said
That
about
was
the
great.
taillight? When
He said it wasn't that damaged. I think so if anything, he kind of remembered it as, I think he said it was cracked, but he didn't say that it was significantly damaged.
That's exactly what he said. So do you think that if the defense, and I've criticized them for this too, that I think they should have gone for the glory there and asked him on cross-examine, because they didn't cross-examine him. They were very satisfied with his testimony, so they didn't cross-examine him. And I think they should have asked him, did the taillight, when you saw it, look like this? And then show the car in the Sally port all destroyed.
Interesting.
Do you think that
I would have thought they did that, but I trust that Turtleboy, who's like, yeah. I would have thought they did, but if he's saying they didn't, I believe
would have been an effective way for the defense to communicate to the jury that this
you guys always judging me for trials I don't pay that much attention to. Others laughing. We love you, Twiz. We love you. We love you. We will. I mean, it's like, as I'm laughing out of love, but also I'm trying to help answer your questions or like clarify things so that you can, so that you're not missing out. Thank you, DSN. Thank you. Investigators found a magic hair on the back of Karen's SUV that stayed adhered through a blizzard. And also, it was quite a long drive, right, guys? I don't remember how much it was. It was a blizzard, and it was like, what, a 45-minute drive or something? And it was a teeny little hair, and that's why it was called the magic hair, because it's like, how did it stick? So the little experiment I did was testing. I had a hair that was, the same size, and I put it in the same location, and I put it in the same shape, and I got it wet to represent, the fact that it was snowing. I did all that, and then I did a test to see how long it would stay, and it was it was surprising to me that in conditions where it was sunny day with no wind, no blizzard, it came off immediately. So anyway, but you guys can watch it if you're interested. Or maybe it'd be worth pulling up just so that way it can refresh everyone's memories. And for those of us who may have missed it, cough, cough, George will stick. I mean, it's super short, but it's a good demonstrative, as if you will. So let me see here. I'll play this as I'm pulling it up.
Taillight was meddled with.
I believe that would create reasonable doubt for members of the jury.
Okay. Let's see. Next here, Terry since 25 says, did they note the bias of Judge Bev? And yeah, what do you guys think of Judge Bev? Did you think she was biased?
We had actually, I have utmost respect for her, given the circumstances of what she has had to deal with. That being said, I wasn't involved, right? So we can't see what's going on the outside, right? So we can't watch the news. We don't know what's going on. Now looking back at it, I still believe that she's looking out for the best interest of everybody. I don't know if it was very clear how maybe it would have been better if she clarified what needs to happen in terms of each of the different charges. That being said, I think we never asked the question. So had we as a jury asked the question, can we convict or acquit based on each individual charge and be hung on one of the charges, I think that would have been. Okay,
I got the video, guys. Okay. Look at this little squangwin being so cute. Here we go.
All right, so we are going to do a little experiment.
Now, while this is not official in any way, shape, or form, I have all the confidence in the world that it's going to be, in many ways, more reliable than anything done in the investigation with the Karen Reed trial. So, what I have here is a car. So, it is quite a windy day today, which might play into some things because we're going to be remembering that it was a blizzard during the time. So, here's my taillight.
Oh, it was. Oh, okay.
So,
I remembered incorrectly. It was actually very windy, but that's more similar to the conditions that would have happened then. So, okay.
First of all, the height. Now, obviously, this is a Prius and not an SUV. However, you know, the taillights are going to be.
You can hear the wind, right? It would. That is not that. It was an exceptionally windy day, which is really funny.
In a similar area. The point being, not nearly at the height of somebody's head when they're over 6 feet tall. This taillight here comes to like my hip area. So then let's just take a look here because, you know, it looks like a solid piece of machinery, whatever the fuck.
Oh yeah, that's right. This is kind of important.
But if I knock it, you can tell it's very hollow, right? And like all of this stuff here, like it looks like it's like thick layers of glass or whatever. It's an illusion basically because it's just plastic, right? And it's like they have that lining in there, which we saw it with Karen's vehicle. We'd see the inside was all silvery.
There it is. Example right there. Illusion.
It's that lining to give it. It's like a mirror effect where it's reflective. So that light, even without it being on, light reflects, right? So so while it looks like there's a lot of shit in there, it's not. It's just hollow. And so yeah, so that's what we got. Now also what we got is a hair, and the testimony was that they measured the hair at 7/8 of an inch. So I pulled the hair from my head so I could have the root tip on it because they talk about that. I don't know if that's going to make a difference in terms of how it attaches to the vehicle, but I measured it I cut it because I have really long hair. I cut it short to 7/8 of an inch. So it's just the very tip of my hair. So if you imagine a short piece of hair from somebody's head, right? Like it's like that, but it's the same length as what they have in evidence as far as the hair on the vehicle. It's obviously it's hot, whatever. I can't duplicate the temperature, but we do know that there would have been some sort of moisture on her car because of the fact that there had been some snow. So in order to duplicate that, I've got just a spray bottle here with some water. It was a vertical panel where the hair was. And I would say that, you know, while for hers, it was under the tail light on the bumper. My bumper is curved. So I'm actually going to go right next to it because this is more of a vertical surface here. So I'm just going to spray.
Pollen.
Sorry, it's dirty. It's pollen. So I'm going to spray a little bit of water, good amount of water, just to be sure it's wet. Okay. Now I've got my little hair, little focus. There we go. That's the root tip, I think there. So I'm just going to take it and
watch how it automatically.
It's actually curved, which is good because it's kind of curved, the one that they had. And I'm just going to place it.
It automatically.
That's pretty good in terms of duplicating.
Doesn't
now, I'm not going to press it on. It's so actually this is interesting. So I put it there,
like the one.
and now you can actually see how parts of it. I don't know if you. It's pretty good at duplicating it though, isn't it? So it's kind of a backwards C shape.
Yep, interesting.
On there. I would imagine that because it's more humid in the summertime, I would imagine that moisture would last longer than when it was dry.
Yep. I'm agreeing with this.
But anyway, so there's the hair. And we took a look at the taillight already. But what I'm going to do now is that hair's there. I'm going to drive over to the grocery store.
Here's Teeter.
Which is literally right across the street from me, right that direction. And it's a very short drive. I'm going to drive to the grocery store and come home. And then we're going to see if that hair is still there.
The results.
Y'all, I just got back from the Harris Teeter. 2-second drive across the street. There's a slight breeze. It was a little bit windier earlier, but it's been on and off. Anyway, take note of what is no longer here. The hair is gone. So, yeah. Also, I just wanted to say real quick, my car has damage to it that I did not do, and I have no idea how it got there. including this is pretty significant right here. That like chipped the paint, like kind of dented it. And then there's like minor scrapes and shit. But all of this I did not do. So I would imagine this is when my car was parked in a parking lot somewhere and somebody hit it with something. Just saying. So there you go. That was the experiment. Who's wearing sandals? Me? It was summer during the trial. I'm wearing my Chacos. I mean, I don't know if you're talking about me, but I was wearing sandals. That's right. Squirrel powered science experiments. That's exactly right. We have all kinds of presentations that we always do. We need to do another law squirrel university one as well here soon. Okay, so now we'll go back to old Turtleboy. Turtleboy, tell him. You guys remember that song from back in the day? What's the chorus on that one? What is it apart from that, other than the Turtleboy tell him? I don't remember. Yeah, right? Oh, that's funny. I got my swim trunks and my flippy floppies. I'm flipping burgers you at Kiko Street, making copies. I'm riding on a dolphin, doing flips and shit. The dolphin splashing, getting everybody all wet. This ain't Sea World. This is real as it gets. I'm on a boat, motherfucker. Don't you ever forget. I'm on a boat. And do you guys know what I'm just singing there? Probably not. Hopefully you do. Best song ever. It's going fast. And my band in college covered that song one time, and I got to be T-Pain, and it was my favorite thing. I was like, I just want to be T-Pain, and they're like, you got it. I fucked a mermaid. Yes. Take a picture trick. I'm on a boat, bitch. I'm drinking sand. I can do the whole song. We don't need to, I rap enough somehow these days. So yes. Yep. You guys are so funny. You guys are so funny. I'm like, one of these days, somebody who actually like can rap is going to hear this on accident and like send death threats my way or something. Yep. Lonely Island. Yep. Oh my God. Freaking love him on a boat though. Heather, keeping it real. The Wendy.
I ate a lunch. Like I had a whole delicious lunch. Yesterday I was taking a walk around 5. I met a new friend. We went to Tallahassee food trucks.
Wow.
Last night, hung out with her for hours.
Yeah.
Wendy made another new friend. Are you fucking kidding me? Why?
She also Googled. There was a shooting, do you know? Both she and John.
Stop.
Why would they
Google? You guys.
Why would that just come
I'm
up?
going. Sorry. Heather says, I met a new friend on a whole. Oh, no, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to hide the other one.
Yesterday I was taking a walk around 5. I met a new friend. We went to Tallahassee food trucks.
Wow.
Last night, hung out with her for hours.
Yeah.
Wendy made another new friend. Are you fucking kidding me? Why?
She also Googled. There was a shooting, do you know? Both she and John.
Stop.
Why would they
Google? You guys.
Why would that just come
I'm
up?
going. Sorry. Heather says, I met a new friend on a whole hawk. Bitch, how old are you?
My friend Elizabeth is a mortician. She's the prettiest mortician I've ever met.
You guys. Andy's friend, the fucking mortician. What is happening? The thing is it never gets old. Honestly, I will never tire of the Wendy clips. They are fucking hilarious, and they get funnier over time somehow. I mean, it is amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. And let's not forget about Fievel either, right? Because see, I hadn't seen it in a couple days, so that it's even funnier because it's like we had a couple days with no Fievel. Now we're Fieveling. Every day I'm Fieveling. Right? I know. The little Mises. I always call them Mises. Little singing their little song. Somewhere. I'm trying to do the mouse voice, but anywho. Shawty. Oh yeah, get your towels ready. It's about to go down. Well, hold on. What is it? It's about to go down. Get your towel. Hit the motherfucking deck. We on our motherfucking toes. We running this shit. Something. Anyway. How could the only part I'm somehow missing is the intro? But see, I switched over to mouse mode with somewhere, and then I had to switch back over to T-Pain, and my brain's like, whoa. Oh God. Let me see here. Yeah, I was right. Get your towels ready. It's about to go down. Everybody in the place hit the fucking deck. Right. Stay on your motherfucking toes. We running this. Let's go. Okay, I think had that. I'm on a boat. I'm on a boat. Everybody look at me because I'm sailing on a boat. I can't do both voices at the same time. I'll do the T-Pain. I'm on a boat. Take a good hard look at the motherfucking boat. Anyway, y'all. I could. I'm not gonna continue on. We've been there. Blackwater's back from her shower. How was it, my friend? Oh, well, see, now we have to. Hey, Moth, you can see me now. Arms spread wide on the starboard bow. Gonna fly the boat to the moon somehow. Like Kevin Garnett. Anything is possible. Yeah. Never thought I'd be on a boat. It's a big blue watery road. Yeah. Poseidon, look at me. Whoa. Never thought I'd see the day with a big boat coming my way. Believe me when I say I fucked a mermaid. Oh, yeah. Whoa. Shusha. Yeah. That's amazing. That's a compliment. She had a hot shower. Excellent. Anywho, that was a fun journey. So now we can go back to this, though.
Been nice to know. And I don't know if that's a fallacy of us as the jury, or a fallacy of the system, or a fallacy of the judge.
Yeah.
So I don't want to
judge. Fallacy of the judge.
Point any fingers, but yeah,
you're an EMT. You're not a jury. You're an EMT. She works in courts every day. She could have asked you guys that, and that question wasn't asked. And so that's how we ended up, of course, with mistrial. Kim sends $10 and says, were the jurors aware of Fanning's closeness to the investigators? Did you ever see John Fanning at all during this whole thing? Do you even know who that is? Okay. Next one, Laura sends $10, says, what did the jury think of the butt dials, the inverted video? We've kind of been over this. The Albert's not coming outside of the house. Higgins throwing his phone away. Yeah, what do you guys think of Higgins destroying his phone?
That in and of itself was very suspicious. I mean,
no kidding.
To know to destroy or change cell phones, right? Right around the time that there's possible subpoenas that are going to occur. I don't know how you would know, obviously. You can, right? But you would know that a subpoena is going to occur, and then change your phone, right? Change your phone, switch out, destroy the chip, the SIM card, so that it can't be.
I mean, we all get new phones. We all get new phones every couple of years, right? What do you do with an old phone when you get rid of it? Do you go to a military base and get rid of the SIM card? What do you do with your old phones? I keep them in I have a drawer full of them, or I had a drawer full of them.
I always have a drawer full of them, or you give them, you donate them to I think there's like a bin somewhere that you can give it back to, right? Just donate, but.
Yeah. But was that discussed at all? Like I personally, if I was in that jury room, I'd be like, bro, they destroyed their SIM cards. They're throwing phones to military bases. These people are shady as fuck. I can't believe a word they're saying.
Up on Trescott after the murder, you know?
Dang. Did that come up at all?
I believe we, again, talked about it, but we're like, is this a distractor? They're just trying to make people think that there's something else going on when there really isn't. So,
yeah. Next up, we have Tom says, can you ask the juror about the one juror that got dismissed, as well as the juror notebooks? What was the protocol about them being babysat? I don't really understand the question there, Tom. But he does also say great interview and nice bow tie collection. You wore a bow tie every day to court.
I tried to get a different bow tie each time.
Excellent. Yeah. So you know, it was very noticeable when you guys went in there every day with the bow tie. So at least you took it seriously. Laura sent, no, this is from Dana Nicole, sends $10, says, what was the jury consensus about Jen McCabe's Google search? Okay, we already went over that. Kim sends $5 and said, did they believe or take any issue with Jen McCabe's honesty or dishonesty? Everybody's favorite witness is Jennifer McCabe to talk about. And I mean, we've talked about the Google search, but what did people think of her? Was she convincing to these people? Was she villain or was she loving friend?
I think
Banshee voice.
it wasn't very clear. It was more of an indifferent. Like she wasn't helpful for the necessarily for the prosecution, but also not necessarily helpful for the defense. She was this neutral kind of individual that provided some testimony, but most of, at least for myself, I would not consider her testimony as anything worth looking at or reviewing.
Wow. Sarah sends $5. Says,
Oh
did
my
they have
God.
any?
I just got a notification on my phone. You guys, what is going on with the airports and the planes these days? I just got a notification. A Delta flight flips over in Toronto. Carla, remind me, are you joining us from Canada? I can't. We've got a number of Canadian squirrels, which is awesome. Shout out to Canada. But like, what the fuck is going on with the airports and the planes these days? I feel like it's just been ever since like December. It's been like one thing after another. You know what I mean?
People keep asking about
Remember,
Fanning. Did they
even
have
Splash ran into troubles trying to get to Aruba.
any interaction with
Aruba.
Fanning that was odd? Notebooks, how were they secured? So we all went over this. Thank you.
Oh, they are?
Mackenzie sends $5 and says, it sounds like you guys threw out all of the other witnesses' testimony.
Oh,
Did you
Georgia.
find
Okay.
any witnesses suspicious? We kind of been over this. You obviously did find some of that suspicious, but others believe that was a distractor, I believe, correct? That's wild.
That's what I believe is the distractors versus
Yeah.
suspicious.
Laura, Krista sends $5, says, can you ask the juror what they thought about the inverted video? We went over that. AFOC sends $10 and says, what did he think about the butt dials? We went over that. Thank you. Jody sends $25, says, Ronnie, thank you for this interview. Most of us lived.
I don't discount that. I'm sure. I mean, you know, I guess to me, it's noteworthy that it's being reported more, right? Of course. So, but Carla, whereabouts in Georgia? We have some other school friends in Georgia as well, and you're kind of close to me here in North Carolina.
Most of us have lived this case for a year. We know the facts inside and out. Insight into what went on during the deliberations, although jaw-dropping, is informative and appreciative. And I echo what that person says because we live for this shit, man. I mean, we've been following this case. This is the biggest. You were one of 12 people on the biggest murder trial in the country, and so many people know our encyclopedias of facts, you know, on this case, and it's just very eye-opening to hear what went on in this room. I don't think anybody anticipated, you know, some of the things that you've said about it. So thank you for sharing that. This is Stephanie sends $5 and says, what did they think of the inverted video? Would the FBI hiring Arca made a difference? Been over that. Thank you. And Nancy sends $5, says, what about Karen connecting to John's Wi-Fi when the accident supposedly happened? And the 3 flights of stairs that he went up and down. So yeah, because I always bring up the 3 flights of stairs thing. To me, that's the biggest piece of evidence, putting John inside the house.
Oh, here's the stairs bit again. Okay.
Apple Health data shows him going up and down 3 flights of stairs. Did the Apple Health data come up at all?
I think had there been an expert to provide us some information on accuracy of that kind of data when somebody's actually walking up the stairs, or could it be mimicked by movement of the individual inside a vehicle going into a different plane, you know? So I think
the thing is, so this is funny because we were talking about this earlier. What's funny is like I forgot about that, right? So because the example I gave is I could see it being maybe duplicated if you like throw your phone in the air, but you can't do that if you're in a vehicle anyway, right? Although Meg was reminding me that it was said that wouldn't have triggered it either. And by the way, I totally remember that happening with the Titan. I was for whatever reason, I was very, very, very okay. Like I remember when that happened, I remember like whatever, I don't remember what trial was going on at the time, but like whatever trial I was watching and I was in, you know, chats at different places, like I figured I'm usually the last person to learn things, right? Because I'm not on social media. But for whatever reason, I somehow saw something I think I must have got a notification. I got something about that apparently before anybody else did, because I remember being shocked that I was like, oh yeah, blah, blah. And then people were like, what? And I was like, you guys don't know, this is a first, you know? But I followed that thing like crazy, you know? I was very up to speed on that, and I found it very, very, very interesting. I almost started covering it at one point, but I was like, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about there, Twiz. That whole thing was crazy, crazy, crazy. Okay. I mean, yeah, I wasn't paying attention. I ignore him there. So that was not what I was paying attention to. There must have been a trial. What, do you guys remember the month and the year? And then maybe I'll remember what trial was happening. Yeah, I also was not watching that. I stay out of political stuff. Okay, Heather's right. So that happened, but there wasn't much to follow with that, right? So that couldn't have been there had to be an actual trial. June, Father's Day weekend. Well, if it was June, did it overlap with this trial, Karen Reed? Probably. Or was it the year prior? I'm trying to remember. I feel like it was the year. Well, anywho, there's always some trial, right? So, but yeah, crazy. And we just, so crazy how they don't ever do the follow up, right? Because like we knew there was gonna be a ton of lawsuits coming out of that, right? And like we never. I mean, I guess I could go digging for that, but one thing at a time, right? Or sorry, that's not accurate. It's like 8 things at a time in terms of cases. Only 8. Just limit it to 8. I need to clone myself or get an assistant.
Those were pieces that were not very clear.
An expert obviously could have clarified that, if from Apple or something, if they could find an expert, or somebody who just uses Apple Health data. For like a lot of people, personal trainers use Apple Health data for their clients. They have to use, monitor, show me that you guys got your steps in, blah, 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 blah. Nobody brought that up and says, hey, wait a minute. I use Apple Health data all the time. And I don't
So we couldn't do any kind of investigation on our own after we got some data or some evidence or testimony. But that was definitely in some of our minds. Like we kind of
couldn't do the great hair experiment like I did.
Wished we knew like more about it. Like, does it matter if I go in an elevator? Will it pick it up? Or does it need to be, I need to actually actively be walking and then go up the stairs? So I think we kind of discussed that, or it was talked about, but not extensively. And it would have been nice, again, to have it as part of testimony with an expert witness.
Now, what if the defense had offered testimony from Karen Reed's phone that showed that Karen Reed's Apple Health data does not show that she was ascending and descending 3 flights of stairs during the time in which John O'Keefe was? Wouldn't that prove to you, because it's a controlled situation there, that they weren't in the same place, that one of them had to be in a house and the other one wasn't? Because that wasn't introduced.
Yeah, that would be compelling evidence in that they had to be in the same sort of scenario. So both data points would be similar, if not the same.
Right. Take notes, Alan Jackson. I mean, I don't know why they didn't bring that up, because that seems completely
relevant. Why didn't they bring that up?
Karen Reed's
why didn't they bring that up? That doesn't make any sense.
Phone data did not mimic John O'Keefe's when it should, right? If he didn't go inside the house.
Now, see, that I was paying attention to, but there must have also been a trial. But I was paying attention to that. But yeah, he made a good point here. I don't know why they didn't bring that in.
Next up, let's see. Turtle Love sends $10. Says, did the jury notice a marked lack of basic evidence like photos and videos? And did it seem like this was abnormal? Surely people on the jury must watch, read the news. And that, like, if you committed a crime or something like this, like they pull surveillance video everywhere. They get everything. Nothing like that happened. There's a guy with a Ring camera across the street. They didn't even knock on his door. Jurors didn't think that was wicked suspicious.
I think it was, we were given the task to assess the evidence that was provided to us, and that was the evidence that was provided. So we don't know of any existing evidence that was not presented to us, never mind any investigations that may have been done versus not done, because we were just provided with whatever evidence that they wanted us to look at to try to make an objective decision.
You Wrong sends $5 and said that the jury discussed the lack of chain of custody of all evidence and errors and the lack of documentation or reports. Did that get brought up?
Oh, we definitely, I mean, the solo cups and the never mind the leaf blower, like all of that was significantly kind of discussed as a group.
What did people say?
We kind of looked at it and said, okay, maybe this was a problem with the system. Maybe these are individuals who weren't trained adequately. They didn't know the resources. It was the middle of a snowstorm. Okay. Anyway.
So you gave him okay, all right. Lindsay sends $10 and says, what happened in the room after the judge declared a mistrial? Did it just did she come to see you? And did anyone share with her about the acquitting on the two charges? Good
Absolutely.
Question. She did come to see us. She thanked us for our service, and then asked us to wait until the area was secured before we were able to leave and leave safely. We did not discuss it with her at that point. I don't know if that would have changed something. I don't know if it would be a done deal at that point.
I don't know if Twiz, are you making, we just have to make sure. No squirrel left behind. Twiz, are you making a joke? Are you being sarcastic or not? Because I just want to make sure that we all know what's, I think everyone else here watched the trial and watched probably a lot of it more than once. So just let me know if you're being sarcastic or not with that one. I mean, it is funny if it's a joke. Just want to make sure.
Point as a direct result of it was already declared. So I don't know, but it may have changed the future of what is happening now in terms of the SJC's decision.
There was one juror crying, I noticed, and it was a woman.
Okay. So does anybody think the arm got scratched from the taillight though? That's my point there is not about the bending over. It's that the arm didn't get scratched by the taillight either. That's the other thing. Like the point that I'm making is he wasn't hit by a car at all in any part of his body. I mean, there's no way that those wounds came from scratching a taillight. Okay, so you are being sarcastic then, I guess. Yeah, right. That is what the state says, right? So.
Woman, I called her juror number 7. Was it emotional in that room? Were people crying? Were people upset? And what was that like?
I think we were all relieved that it was over, and that our service was over. I think the culmination of that, as well as the culmination of emotions in terms of now our lives can continue on, but however, we didn't really come to a conclusion, and we didn't offer any kind of help per se to the justice system where we were supposed to try to achieve a goal, and we weren't able to come to that consensus, unfortunately.
Susan sends $10, says, what was the name of the officers who oversaw the jury?
One question that nobody's asked him that I hope somebody asks him is if he's going to watch the second trial. I would love to know if now he's interested and he's going to watch the other trial.
Thank you, Susan. Brian sends $10 and says, Ronnie's thoughts on Proctor, the Google search, and John's injuries to his arm. Been over all that. Thank you. Lori sends $25 and says, how did the jury explain 3 of the main people at the house disregarding the directive to turn over their phone records, yet all ultimately got rid of their phones regardless? Okay, so again, let me answer this for you. Guys, they think the people that thought she was guilty thought these were all distractors and that they focused on the tax stream data, the evidence, the drinking and driving. Was that the right answer?
Yeah.
Okay,
that's pretty much the answer there.
Yeah, there it is.
All right, thank you. Yaya sends $5 and says, thank you so much, Ronnie. Did you believe Jennifer McCabe's testimony? Been over that. Did you find her combative with Ellen Jackson? And yes, we've been over all that. Danielle sends $5, says, thank you, Ronnie. What did you think about Proctor? Do you think Karen Reed's innocent or guilty? We've been over that. Thank you, Danielle. Kevin from Southie sends from Sauceville sends $22 and says, did the video of Higgins being held back while motioning John to come outside a few minutes before he died strike you as odd? Did you guys even notice that?
No, I don't think we noticed that.
Yeah. It's been, so take note of that, defense. Take notice of that. Jurors didn't really notice it because I didn't even notice till afterwards. People brought it up. It's pretty wild.
Interesting.
Yeah. Laura.
You noticed what? I missed it because I was trying to figure out what Twiz was talking. What people weren't on trial? Okay, I want to see what this
from Sauceville sends $22 and says, did the video of Higgins being held back while motioning John to come outside a few minutes before he died strike you as odd? Did you guys even notice that?
No, I don't think we noticed that.
Yeah. It's been, so take note of that, defense. Take notice of that. Jurors didn't really notice it because I didn't even notice till afterwards. People brought it up. It's pretty wild.
Interesting.
Yeah. Laura Scott sends $5 and said, did any of the jurors understand that Jen McCabe Googling how long to die in cold at 227 meant that she knew John O'Keefe was dying in front of her house? You've been over that. So thank you, Scott. Forrest Dump sends $25 and says, did it seem weird to the jury that they all had text messages from prosecution witnesses. I mean, did you guys think that was weird? That like, wait a minute, why do they
I
have a
think so.
group chat between Matt McCabe, Brian Albert, talking about like, did the guy go in the, tell him the guy didn't go in the house?
yeah, that
did you
was
guys think that
crazy.
was weird? Like that
was
they have all
weird.
their personal messages?
I mean, the whole circumstances in terms of
That was
the
weird.
meetings
I
and
totally forgot about that one too. Another thing about this trial, the text messages about telling the guy didn't come in the house. That was insane. Insane.
all of those little pieces was very weird and suspicious. And I think that's why it was easy for some versus some it was a little bit harder to look at as evidence for reasonable doubt.
Canton Citizen sends $5 and says, if you had reasonable doubt for murder too because of the physics, as you said, how did you not have the same reasonable doubt for manslaughter? He did. He voted. He was a not guilty voter. Thank you very much, Canton Citizen. Michelle sends $5 and says, did anyone pay attention to the police officer in Stoughton who was there for them to tow Karen's car? It's Dighton.
Yeah,
It says the high light was
already
cracked,
talked about
not in a million pieces. Yeah, we just talked about that. Thank you, Nicholas Barros. Lindsay sends $10 and says, why isn't the jury spoken out as a whole? Has the jury been contacted by the feds? And what did the jury think about Colin Albert and Brian Higgin? We're going to skip that part because I know the answer to that already.
Again, I want to know two things. I want to know if the jury still keeps in touch, because a lot of times juries do. And I want to know also, again, if he plans on watching the retrial.
So first part I'm interested in though,
Not
why
like
hasn't the jury spoken
not
out
like my questions matter. I can't ask him.
as a whole?
I don't know if we can get the group together to speak out as a whole. And I also don't, and that's because I don't know if every juror wants to relive the moment. Now that being said, I think for me, I'm all for it that whoever wants to get together would get together and try to write a petition or something. That being said, I don't know if that's already passed and won't make a difference.
Next up, let's see. Lauren sends $5. Says, was there any discussion?
Saying we're supposed to that? I mean, that was really incredible that he said that, though.
Whoever wants to get together would get together and try to write a petition or something. That being said, I don't know if that's already passed and
sailed on that.
Won't make a difference.
Next up, let's see. Lauren sends $5. Says, was there any discussion about Brian?
He's saying that ship's already sailed. It wouldn't make a difference for this case, but it would make a difference for future cases. It's still worth doing. So I wish he had not just said that and dismissed it, because it's important. It's important, right?
And Albert destroying his phone. Kind of went over that already. Aaron sends $5. Says, hi, Aiden, Ronnie. Hi, Ronnie. Question for Ronnie. What could the defense focus on in trial 2 to really drive home to jurors that Karen's factually innocent? I mean, we kind of been over this already. It's just focus on
the facts of the case. I think facts of the case, and then holes that can be provided. And then afterwards, then maybe add some of the other pieces of evidence that, but I would focus on the major pieces first, which is injuries to John O'Keefe, injuries and damages to the motor vehicle, consistent with his injuries and ultimately his cause of death, because the medical examiner's ruling was a basilar skull fracture and then ultimately hypothermia. So if that can be found to have some sort of evidence, testimony showing that that was not the case, that the injuries that John actually had is not consistent with the damages to the motor vehicle, then there's there's damages, but there's no causation. So I think that will help with reasonable doubt.
This is from KW for $10 and says, did you guys already discuss the jury field trip to 34 Fairview? The size of the yard that no one saw the body, not even Lucky Locker. So my question for that is that, do you think you guys you had a field trip to 34 Fairview, but at that point you hadn't heard from any of the McAlberts or anybody like that. So you had no, like, if you had heard from all them, if you had heard, for instance, that Brian Albert wasn't awoken to come out.
They did that shit on purpose, right? I remember thinking the same thing. I was like, why are they taking them already? Yeah, I can see where he's going with this. I totally agree.
Inside the house. And then you saw the lawn and you saw the size of the lawn. Would it be easier to envision kind of like...
That's another thing that Dr. Bob, again, who lives in Massachusetts and went and buy a house, that's another thing he said that really left a big impression on him, is he said, the lawn looks so much smaller than it looks like in pictures or even Google Maps. Like he said, when you go by, he's like, that lawn is really, really, really tiny. And I agree. It does not look tiny. In any of the pictures, we did a bunch of field trips, scroll style and did not look tiny, but in real life it looks tiny. And again, just like with Murdoch, right? It was the same thing with the feed room. You can't, some things you can't get an idea of what size it is until you see it in real life. And also that's what she said.
Wait a minute. How could he not come outside? How could he not have been woken up by that? Do you think it would have been more beneficial to Karen Read if you guys did the trip to 34 Fairview Road at the end of the trial instead of at the beginning?
I agree. It would have been more beneficial if it was even at the middle, if not the end, because at the beginning, it wasn't very clear what we're looking at. And we were also told not to look at too much detail, right? You couldn't take too much notes. You were just to observe the situation. So it would have been nice to know.
Like, don't take notes. Don't look at the details. Just wow.
Or see it after the fact, because then you would be able to now realize the lights or the structure of the lights that are close to the flagpole. There's no necessarily street light there.
I want to know if they talked about the fire hydrant. I mean, now I'm like, okay, now that's a third question that I would have for Ronnie. Ronnie, hey, if you're watching, feel free to come on the show and we can have an interview scroll style. But yeah, I also want to know if they talked about the fire hydrant because we talked a lot about that.
Some of us noted that, some of us didn't. The lighting situation of the houses would have been nice to also see so that you could kind of tell.
By the way, guys, I just want to say real quick too, that when I started covering Karen Read the first time around, the thing that everybody appreciated that was there, well, some of you guys were there, some of you weren't there, but I got the thing that everybody said was it was the only place they could find on YouTube where they could come and watch the trial and it wasn't toxic. And so I just wanted to say, I, of course, am going to cover it again the second time. And so I hope that you guys know that it will be a toxic-free environment because that's how we roll here.
Situation of the yard itself. So yes, I agree. I think it would have been better in the middle, if not the end.
Ghost 13 sends $20 and says, thank you for your bravery, Ronnie. How are yours and the jury's interactions and thoughts on John Fanning throughout the whole trial? Okay, we've been over that. Jennifer C sends $10 and says, thank you for joining the show, Ronnie. When you were deliberating, could you hear noise from any of the crowds outside? And was the jury aware of these crowds?
We were aware of the crowd as a direct result of chanting or shouting. And that was when Karen would be coming out into the crowd or coming back in. So that's when we would hear them. But it wasn't distracting in terms of the deliberation per se. There were certain times, obviously during lunch, when we could hear them and it was kind of distracting, but we were continuing our deliberations while having lunch. So, but other than that, it wasn't so bad or a nuisance, if that's what you're asking.
All right, thank you. Jonathan sends $10 and he asked about the Dighton cop. We've been over that. Thank you. Danielle sends $10. Says, did the jury think Karen backing into Officer O'Keefe's vehicle could have caused the damage? Did you guys discuss that at all? About she's on video hitting his car when she goes out.
We saw the video, but I think what caused a lot of individuals to kind of dismiss that was there was no evidence of any pieces there. It would have been nice if somebody had looked there and said, "Ooh, we found some glass pieces, taillight pieces in that area as well." But we do all agree that yes, there was.
I'm trying to remember. I feel like wasn't there where you could see some on the snow, or am I just misremembering that? I feel like
tap there, but I don't know if the tap occurred and it wasn't clear. Again, if somebody was an expert who showed that her vehicle, the taillight sticks out just enough.
Well, all you can do is get the vehicles, get the same type of that John had, get the same one that she had, and do a scroll style experiment, right? Where it's nothing fancy. You just do the thing, try to duplicate it in real life. You know what I mean?
Tapped his vehicle in that area, it would have caused some sort of damage to his vehicle and then some sort of damage to her vehicle.
That's true. Because the just crack, that's true. Because if the crack wouldn't have, this might be the first time I feel like where Ronnie maybe in terms of his own view of it, maybe that was a good point, right? The crack wouldn't necessarily have made a piece fall out.
Interesting. Mary sends $10 and says, do you think it would have affected the jury outcome if you all knew that Jen McCabe's phone contained more than 45?
I'm saying even like for the attorneys, right? Like for the trial, they could, they could do that. They could get the same vehicles and then they could test it out, right? So if people in the real world, like normal people want to do it, then of course, but like I'm saying it would be a good idea because we've just heard from this juror, right? I'm just saying for her defense attorneys, right? Because we just heard from this juror. this is so vital and like helpful, right? It's like, this is what we would, I mean, I agree, because of the fact that nothing was done at the time. The only way to try to push that thought over the edge about the backing up, right, part, like and that whole thing, like the only way to then try to show that to the jury would be you just have to recreate it, right? So it's a great idea that I feel like maybe they should do next time.
100 Google searches across the history of the phone, and only one was deleted, because that has since come out and that will be introduced as evidence in the second trial. Did you know that she did 4,500 Google searches on her phone and deleted one?
That's insane.
No, I mean, that's very clear evidence of, right, suspicious evidence. Anyway.
Oh, look at Ronnie still being a juror. Cute.
People on the jury. All right, hold on. Sorry about this.
Uh-oh, he's a goat. What is happening?
All right, next question is from Jolie, sends $25 and says the SJC stated that as a reason for Karen Reed's appeal denial was when the jury could have spoken up and they didn't. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Scott sends $10, says if the water vault video is focused on with Higgins. Okay. All right. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. Again, I don't want to take up too much of your time. So if I see any questions here that are at all related to something that I've already asked, I'm just going to skip, thank them and move on to the next one. Jessica sends $5 and says, how did the jurors feel about Brian Higgins? I mean, overall, if you could, one word to describe Brian Higgins, how would you describe him?
That's tough.
I don't know if I could say anything nice
Honest?
about.
Would honest be the first word?
Accurate.
Honest?
Yeah.
Would it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sure would. Okay. Thank you. Paul's Crotch sends $10 and they asked about Jennifer McCabe and what people thought. Thank you. Serenity sends $10, says, did learning about Garino's 32,000 texts in the Sandra Birchmore case make the corruption more believable? Do you know about the Sandra Birchmore case? Because this was not brought up at trial either.
Right.
Some things have happened.
Here we go. Back to you guys. For anyone who was asking earlier about the Sandra Birchmore and the text, here it is. 32,000, Trooper Garino. Like the question came up from Meg, right? About the discovery. Compelling the discovery about Sandra Birchmore. Literally, they're just talking about that now.
There's a woman in Canton who was found dead in her apartment a year before John O'Keefe died, and it was the same police, Fanning, a bunch of the state troopers, a bunch of the Canton police. They were in charge of investigating it. They ruled that it was a suicide in about 5 seconds. She was in her bedroom. She was pregnant, 23 years old, and had a belt wrapped around her doorknob in her bedroom and the other around her throat. And she was having an affair with a married police officer from Stoughton named Matthew Farwell, who impregnated her and had been having sex with her since she was 15 years old. She was 23 at the time that she died. And he was not treated as a suspect really in any way, shape, or form. And the police said that he deleted all his text messages. And Nicholas Garino, the same guy who testified about John and Jennifer McCabe's phone, said that he couldn't find or read any of the deleted messages. Well, the FBI arrested Matthew Farwell and charged him with murder in late August because the FBI took over that investigation and they read those messages and they were able to read them. And so do you think, and this has happened since the trial, do you think if that stuff was introduced at trial, that there was another incident in Canton in which
there you go.
a murder was covered up for 3 or 4 years.
This goes to your question as well here.
The same cops are in charge of that. Would that have been effective?
The officer, so Trooper Garino did the cell phone for this police officer he just was talking, and did Karen Reed's cell phone, but also Jen McCabe's cell phone. He did all the cell phones, right? In both of those. He did all the cell break extractions and all the cell phones.
I think all those pieces of evidence would be very effective to sway the jury in one direction or the other.
Yeah. Sofa Slew sends $10, says, did the jury feel they needed to figure out how John died? A couple times you've made reference to this. Okay. Yeah, we already kind of went over that. Thank you. Natalie sends $5 and says, do you feel that you personally naturally trust prosecution more than defense lawyers? Good question.
I think both were trustable. I think it was just one of those where, what were they trying to present, right? What type of information and who they were putting up on the witness stand and using for testimony for their cause is important.
Was Alan Jackson too good? Like, was he too Hollywood? Did he come across to you guys as this guy is just a professional distractor? Did some of the jurors believe that Alan Jackson was full of shit?
No, I don't think. I think that's the other thing that was interesting is we couldn't look up any kind of information on the lawyers. So some of us didn't know anything about Mr. Jackson's
but we all agree that just listening, besides his history, we all agree that he was much more polished and flashy than Adam Lally, who is like, you know, a dial tone, a human dial tone.
Yeah, that's
Um,
that's
did
good.
that, you know, like I get the question there, like, and I'm not sure if I'm communicating it the right way. Like, did Alan Jackson almost come across as like too flashy?
I think to some of us, maybe. I think he was fine. I think it was just, you're right though. He was more polished. He looked more professional in his delivery in comparison to that of
Right.
Adam
Attorney
Lally.
Bob.
Yeah.
Right.
Next one says, Carrie Ann sends
I
$25.
just say again, look up this picture is so beautiful. Blackwater, just gorgeous, stunning.
Says, how could y'all trust the investigation given Proctor's character? I think we kind of been over that. Thank you, Carrie. Nicole sends $10. Says, now that the trial's over, the rest of the jury's had time to read up on the case. Do you know if any guilty votes now believe she's innocent?
I don't know.
Okay.
Damn it, that's
FBI found House Long for $5. Says, what do you think about the ring video of Karen hitting John's Traverse? We've been over that. Thank you. Kristen sends $5 and says, you did an amazing job with this juror. Keep it up. Keep up the great work. And Ronnie's done an amazing job as well. Thank you. Rachel sends $10.
Oh, Blackwatter's picture right here on the, I'll pull it up on the screen because that's the biggest I can make it. That's what she said. Look at how beautiful. Blackwater, for anyone, just to refresh everyone's recollection, she joins us from the Republic of Ireland, and she has the most beautiful accent you will ever hear in your lives. Meg's here.
And says, will you watch the next trial?
I think I mean, I'm
yay! One of my questions I can check off the list. This is one of my questions. Yay!
intrigued by it now, and I definitely want to
had a feeling he would say yes.
See the results. Obviously, not to interfere with it, but to watch it and see how it pans out one way or the other.
How can you not? You know, after you've invested so much of your life and time into this. So thank you. Elizabeth sends $25 and says, "How? What was the jury thought on the judge?"
It's funny because Joel from STS also says Black Widower. I don't know if you have in your mind Black Widower. See how I automatically say it like that. Do you have a correct way? Because I always say Black Widower, and then it's funny. I always get thrown off guard when like I hear Joel say Black Widower. I'm like, oh, what? You know. Anyway.
All right. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Kind of been over that. Thank you. Erica sends $10 and says, thank you, Ronnie, for speaking. What does he feel about Proctor being suspended? Are you aware Michael Proctor has since been suspended?
Yeah, I actually saw the information about him being suspended. I think I saw that multiple individuals regarding this case have been suspended or had some sort of disciplinary action against them. So it is very interesting. I don't know if that's going to come out in light of the new case as well.
I think it might.
But I think that's significant.
Yeah, I think that might get brought up. Anonymous sends $5. Says, how do the jurors feel about the judge's behavior, her size, and whatnot? The jurors, so we've kind of been over that already. You know, a lot of people don't like Auntie Bev just because of her mannerism.
Size? What? Is she a weird size? I'm confused.
I'm just like,
The subtitles put S-I-Z-E-I-C, and it's size like S-I-G-H-S. Okay.
A lot of people just thought she came across as biased.
Oh, she's all
defense, but we kind of been over that against the defense. Lindsay sends $5. Says the United States is currently winning 2-1 over Canada. Why haven't you all gotten together and tried to connect with the SJC or a lawyer or judge about your verdict? You know, so none of you have been contacted by the feds, correct?
No.
Okay.
Not that I know of. I mean, I don't know. I can only speak for myself, but I don't know if other people have contacted or have attempted to try to contact. I have not been contacted by the group to kind of do a group show and say, this is what we have. This is the information that we have.
Okay. Let's see. The girl in her period sends $5 and says, do you think this time around gives jurors more clear and less confusing and more information since more review is needed to make a better decision? I don't understand that question. Thank you very much. Wendy sends $50 and asked about the integrity of Michael Proctor. We've been over that. Thank you, Wendy. Melissa sends $10 and says, hi, Ronnie, thanks for doing this. What did jury members think about Lucky's testimony? And I kind of know the answer to that because I interviewed about it. And I believe you told me that he was the least effective witness that you thought of all the witnesses. Why?
Because he was not able to report on the information where he actually struck a basketball hoop and he didn't report himself. So because he didn't report himself and he wasn't very consistent with his testimony, or he had inconsistency with his testimony, then it was determined that he was not or I basically believe that he was not a credible witness.
Wow, that's wild. I think he was blind because he went by the house and he said he didn't see a body. I mean, that's the most important testimony that he gave, that there was no body.
The only one messing with Meg is, you know who, George Olstick. But yes, Blackwater's a legend for sure.
On the front lawn. And who cares if he had a hoop, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great view. But again, we couldn't give credibility to that little piece because we don't know when he actually did it per se, or it wasn't very clear If it was a more polished testimony, it'd be a different scenario. But given his testimony, it did not come out as the most credible witness.
All right, next up, let's see. Laura sent Michelle sends $10. Says, did the jurors make anything?
Heather, oh no, we have to go there, don't we now? Okay, yeah. Yep. Okay.
Of Julie Nagel changing her testimony from Blob. Also, did they pick up on Ryan Nagel mentioning the FBI investigation? So two-part question there. The one with Julie Nagel.
Sister Nagel.
Did people bring up the fact that like this woman says she saw
right? Remember how I was saying Brother Nagel from earlier? So it's funny because when Lawyer forgot Ryan's name and called him Brother Nagel. So we started doing with we were covering this back then was because there was Brother Nagel, then we had Sister Nagel. So even though so he never called her sister, so it was just funny. So it was like Brother Nagel and Sister Nagel. We even had like all kinds of documents and like timelines and like flow charts and stuff. And like Kit Smith was making some cool graphics for us as well. And I love how she put like for I don't even remember her actual first name now because I just know her as Sister Nagel. Anyway, it was like capital S, right? And then for Brother Nagel's like capital B. It was just great. And that's what everyone knew them as, which just funny.
Black blob on the front lawn and never reported it to anyone?
I think it was one of those things where we were like,
her first name.
Okay, it's snowing. I could see I might be distracted and be like, oh, there's something there, but maybe would not say, oh, there's actually something there. But I don't know if it was very clear that it was the shape or form of a body. I think that would have been helpful if that was clear in the testimony that was it the shape or a form of body, how far away, maybe reenacted or something might have been more helpful to try to sway the jury in one direction versus the other.
I'm laughing.
I like that one. Gives me an idea now. Thank you. And Ryan Nagel, we talked about this before when I interviewed the first time. You did not pick up on the fact that Ryan Nagel said that he was interviewed by the feds. He's the only person that mentioned the feds in the whole trial.
Some of us did. I believe some of us did. It was written down in some notes, but
all right.
It was it was a touch. It was not something that we kind of focused on.
Speaking of, Jody sends $100 and says, what did the jury think about all the quote, you testified at another hearing?
Wow,
what did people think that was about? Because that's whenever they said that you testified at a previous hearing, that's their way of saying that you said this at the federal grand jury when you were brought. They couldn't mention federal grand jury because you couldn't know about that investigation. What do you think they were talking about?
I think most of us were, I mean, at least for myself, we might have been more naive, or I was more naive, and I believed it was another case, unrelated potentially, but some things, that had to deal with either a civil case, not necessarily a criminal case, or not very clear on what type of scenario it was on.
All right.
Oh, how cute.
Let's see.
He doesn't know that there's no grand juries for civil cases. Cute.
What did what did you think about Jen McCabe whispering on the 911 call? Did you guys pick up on that she whispers at the end of the 911 call? You can hear her whispering something.
But we couldn't understand it was hard to make out what she was trying to say.
It was a little, but don't you think, did people discuss the fact that she's whispering at all in a situation like that? It was weird. Who are you whispering to?
No, we weren't really.
No.
We didn't really.
Because the whispering, when she whispers in that call, that happens at exactly 6:07. It aligns with the exact time that her phone data shows that she called her sister inside the house, which she then deleted. And she claims, I never called my sister. She never answered the phone. So yeah, that whatever. Let's see. Susan sends $10 and says, if you were a defendant in court, would you want Auntie Bev presiding on your case?
I mean, I will tell you this, that she did not in any way, shape, or form kind of influence the jury in any way. So she wasn't trying to sway us in one direction or the other, and she was providing us the evidence. That being said, I don't know if there was bias there, but
I just have to say my life's goal now is for George Higgins' Georgial Sticks name to just get longer and longer every day. Keep Nightbot earning his keep here, updating that one. Yeah, you're exactly right. You're exactly right here. And the thing is again, if you're her defense attorneys, right? The key takeaway is between, you've got Turtleboy, and again, he has this. There's plenty of reasons to believe in whatever, right, with this case, right? But the key thing is what matters to this juror, right? Because that's going to be the way to go. And so, yeah, I really like Ronnie. Ronnie, we love you.
Time will tell.
Thank you. Talon sends $10 and asks about backing into the car. We've been over that. Let's see. Kim sends $10 and says, why did some jurors think that certain witnesses were just
You're
distractions
allowed to offer suggestions. You're allowed to offer suggestions.
and not valid evidence? We've been over that. Thank you. Dean sends $10 and says, what did you think of I hit him, I hit him, I hit him? Do you think Karen said that?
I believe that she might have in the stressful situation, but again, I wouldn't necessarily be putting any kind of
That's valid. That's valid. I see what you're saying. That's valid. That's valid. That's valid. That's valid.
or qualifier on that. I would just leave it as that was the stress of the moment. If she said that,
Yeah.
I don't know if she. I mean,
But-
we
so it doesn't
hear whatever we want to hear.
So
Right.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if she says it. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's not going to affect your wave. Okay. And I think that's a good answer because people have said that to me. I'm like, I don't give a shit if Karen Reed confessed to the whole thing at the scene. The science says she didn't. So I will never believe she did because I don't care what she said. So thank you very much for that. Charlie Spanks Lally for $5 says, okay, we're not going to read that one. Let's see. Susan sends $10, says, if you were a defendant in court, would you want Judge Bed? No, we went over that one. I apologize. Kelly sends $5, says, what about the change in time from the Commonwealth's opening statement to Trooper Paul, but then Garino saying 12:36 to Juan Meadows? Did you guys pick up on all that? That they initially said that he was hit at 12:45, and then Trooper Garino testified that she was back at John's house at
We need
12:36.
brainstorm. What other types of sticks are there? That's what we
And how could this be?
I think there was some of us who was very good at writing down notes and would be able to pick up on that. But I think the problem is that once we started deliberation, that's the first time we're looking at our notes again, because we don't have any time to actually look at our notes, and then trying to find those
Yeah, it's
pieces of
interesting because he doesn't pull them up on the screen, right? Which is interesting that he doesn't pull, like, I've never seen anybody, I don't think, do that where, like, I mean, sometimes you can respond to comments on pulling them up on the screen, right? But the way he's doing it, usually you pull them up on the screen, which is odd.
information where there was kind
That's
of
the point,
these
We don't want to go that route.
inconsistencies. Would have been nice if we had, and
Right.
looking back at it, put an asterisk at the top or folded that sheet so that it'd be easier to reference, because that was some of our problems, is trying to remember all the pieces of inconsistencies and trying to
Yeah.
deliberate based on those inconsistencies.
Flow chart. I know it's so, I can't imagine how much information you had to take in. And then if it's not, you got to go through your notebooks. You can't even watch. You can't even do like we did. Just go back and watch it on YouTube. You guys had to use your notebooks. I mean, what century is this? It's just wild. Let's see. Another juror. This is Brenda sends $5, says another juror says they could hear the noise outside. Is that true? We've been over that. Thank you. Steve sends $10, says, what did they feed you for lunch each day? Where was it from?
They gave us a menu and we were able to order from the menu.
Nice.
So
All right.
that was nice.
That's nice. Lori sends $5, says, now that it's over and you know much more of the story, do you think someone got away with murder?
Better than gruel sandwiches, gruel omelets, nothing but gruel. Anyone know that reference? You get a million school points.
You didn't kill him. Someone else did, right?
I believe so.
Okay. Julie sends $5. She asked about the feds mentioned on the stand. Been over that. Thank you. Jack sends $10. Says, could Ronnie please clarify what he means by distractions? Been over that, guys. Again, when he says distractions, he's saying that the other jurors, right, viewed all of this stuff about the conspiracy and the dog and, Jennifer McCabe's Google search as distractions. That's what he's talking about. Let's see. Carrie sends $10. Say, you're saying Karen needs witnesses to explain the injuries couldn't come from a car. That was ARCA, but they weren't credible because the jury thought they were from an insurance company. So do you think Karen paying for experts like that would be more believable? I don't understand the question, Carrie.
I do.
I think they're just trying to figure out.
Ronnie gets it. I get it. What they're saying is, would you have been better? Because usually when you have an expert witness who's hired, right? Every trial they make a big deal of it, right? How much are you getting paid to be here? The question is, would you have found them more credible if they were like, hey, you're hired by the defense and how much were you getting paid and blah, blah, versus a third party where they don't know where it came from?
If some of the, if part of the defense paid for that kind of investigation. And like I said, we didn't know where this was coming from, where these experts were coming from. And it was great. They gave their credentials, but at the same time, we were kind of confused on why were they giving this data piece? And I get it. They were trying to create a reasonable doubt. And for some of us who were on the fence, it did create that reasonable doubt. But for those who were already determined with one decision, it didn't help because, again, it felt like it was a distractor to prevent them from siding in one
I mean,
direction.
the thing is, they weren't even there to create reasonable doubt. They weren't there for any purpose at all. That's the thing. They were just completely neutral, objective. They were there because they do their jobs, and that's literally it. And they were the best at what they do. Like, that's why they were there. And if if their expertise and their research and their studies and all the shit, the cannons and everything, you know, all this shit that they did, you know, if it shows that like John O'Keefe was not hit by a car, then, and that's reasonable doubt, which it is, then great, right? But that's not their purpose. Like, they were just there to be like, this is what happened. This is what
Lally's handful of pencils for $10 sends $10 and says, what did you think of Julie Nagel or Julie Albert saying Trooper Bukaki twice on the stand? You may notice I'm wearing a shirt with Julie Albert's face on it that says Trooper Bukaki. Do you know what a Bukaki is?
Yeah, so it was very interesting because some of us were, we couldn't keep a straight face. I think some of us were keeping a straight face. We were trying to look somewhere else in a full way to distract and not laugh. And we couldn't even look at anybody in the room. So the ceiling fan was a very good distractor. So some of us were looking towards the ceiling fan just to not even laugh or make a sound, because it would be very unprofessional of the jury to start laughing hysterically. But yes,
so
that was very much noticed by.
So I named him. I named him that. That's my name for him. I call him Bukaki. And I could say it all the time. And so Julie Albert saying that on the stand was just, for me.
He had already been calling her that? Is that what he's saying? I didn't know that. That's really funny that he already had been calling him that. Weird.
It's one of the greatest moments ever because I'm like, she watches my show. And she said it twice. And then right after that, I was kicked out of court. Like, they had the whole thing, which you guys couldn't even know was happening. There was a whole, my lawyer had to come in and they wanted me out of court because I'm charged with intimidating them. And she said Bukaki, and I swear it's because I was in court and I just flustered her. But I agree. I was in that courtroom. That was hilarious. That was wild. I don't know how you guys kept a straight face. Let's see. Kathy sends $5, says, Ronnie, what did the jury think about the IT employee who said that the DVD that he gave the Commonwealth of video footage wasn't what he actually gave them?
Okay.
Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Don't call that.
I mean, there's so much shit. There's so much shit. Yeah. He was the guy that gave him 2 minutes of footage from the library video was gone at the exact.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And I remember now.
At the exact moment Karen Reed would have driven by, and they gave him a CD, and he goes, this isn't how I gave it to you. He sent them a digital file on an email, and then they burned it onto a CD, and then 2 minutes were missing, supposedly. The exact 2 minutes when Karen Reed drove by, and we would have seen the condition of her taillight. And if it was in pristine condition, then she didn't just hit John O'Keefe, and that's gone. A lot of stuff is just gone. So
actually, we saw that footage though. We analyzed that footage.
No, you didn't see that footage because that footage was you're thinking of, they showed Canton Library footage from about 12 at like midnight, right around the time when Karen was there, when she went out looking for John at 5 a.m. They showed it too, but you didn't see the footage at 12:30. The footage from 12:37 and 12:39 was gone. It's just gone.
Wow.
So you didn't see any footage, and that wasn't even really brought up at a trial. I mean, it's just, there's so much to this that they could bring up. But again, the people on the jury that said she was guilty would probably just call it a distractor.
Yeah.
This is let's see. Kelly sends $5, says, Ronnie, thank you for your service and speaking out. Thank you. Amber sends $25, says, thanks, Ronnie. Do you think there's any evidence the defense could have actually brought that would have swayed some of the other jurors? We've been over this already. You know, the Apple Health data expert, the tech stream expert, somebody like that.
Yeah. Julie Albert, the lady on the shirt, is the person who said that on the witness stand when she was like, she was asked a question about who did she speak with or something. Right. And the officer's real name is Yuri Buchanan. And she was like, oh, his name started with a B. And then she said Bukaki. And then she's, she says it twice, I guess, or whatever. So it is a dude, but that's the lady who said it is on the shirt.
Nancy sends $25 and says, did the lack of blood from the cut on his head give any questions to him actually dying on the lawn? Mm-hmm. Again, we've been over this, guys, with the lack of blood. There was plenty of blood. So Karen Reed herself has been over that. So we're going to move on to the next thing. Thank you, Nancy. Carrie sends $10 and said, did he realize Julie Albert said Trooper Bukaki? Okay. Julie sends $5, says, thank you. Ronnie, did any jurors question where all the blood? Oh, okay. The blood. Thank you, Julie. Vicky sends $10 and said the jury mistake their job and feel like they had to figure out how John O'Keefe died.
Could be. Couldn't agree more that she's a horrible slag for sure.
I don't know the answer to that one.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. Lulu sends $10.
I think it was just a head injury. So the head injury and hypothermia, right? But who caused the head injury? And there was, we also kind of said some theories in the deliberation where he could have fallen himself. So he could have fallen back and by his own accord and end up exactly where he was.
Like the fire hydrant.
right, Karen striking him.
Mm.
So,
Oh
and
my God,
that's
you talk about the fire hydrant. 'Cause that's one of the things I want to know.
where he laid to rest, unfortunately. So who knows, right? Maybe from a standing height, he could have sustained that head injury and
So
fell
people
on
were
his
just
head. But
so people
if,
so people
if
people
he
just
was so
make,
inebriated, who knows?
so people were just making up theories about, like, it sounds like, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I mean, that's wild.
Yeah, we
let's
were
see.
kind of thinking of what are the possibilities.
That's what all of us have been doing because it has not been explained. The head injuries, we have no. I mean, the state is supposed to prove that, and they didn't, right? So even though they don't have to figure that out, you can't blame them for asking those questions, right? I mean, that makes total fucking sense, right? Even though it shouldn't affect their verdict, right? Although, having said that, the only relevance would have to that is like, oh, well, clearly the state didn't prove it, right? So. Although
And it didn't seem like, based on the evidence that we were provided, it seemed like we were already given the theory that caused the injury, which was she backed up.
Right.
That's why there's a broken taillight.
Right.
He has an injury. He's dead.
Okay.
So
Lulu's
what I'm saying, which is, well, yeah, of course we talked about it because the theory that was given to us didn't make any fucking sense.
sends $10. Is, what do you think of the kids having to testify?
Is Heather making a cake?
What do you think of that?
So, at least for me, I felt that it was unnecessary and not very professional. Right, that's the easiest way to describe it. I think it was an unnecessary thing to have them to be placed on the stand. For what?
Yeah.
I don't know, just maybe for a shock factor. I don't know.
Ooh,
So if you were the
wow.
Commonwealth retrying this
Wow.
case, you would not bring them back. You would be like, this is not, didn't
I
go the way
would
you guys hoped it would.
not, because it wasn't professional. I would not.
Okay. Let's see. Chris sends $10. So again, I'm gonna keep these real brief because there's so many. I'm gonna read the ones that I got here, but I'm not gonna ask you to answer all of them. Let's see. Nikki sends $10. Says, was Jackson confronting Jen McCabe about the harassment she received effective, and did you feel bad for her? Because that she's talking about me there.
Yeah, I mean, the harassment specifically. I mean, yeah. I think it was.
For the record, that's complete bullshit. I never harassed her. I asked her questions. I confronted Jennifer McCabe, and this is why I was charged with witness intimidation. I confronted her in public and asked her several times, why did you Google how long to die in cold at 2:27 a.m.? And I've called her a cop killer many times. And because of that, I've been charged with that. And she has gone, she made it all about me on the stand, as I knew she would. Whenever she got in the bond, she's like, and we are being viciously harassed, and then started crying. But she sold it well, you're saying.
So she sold it well to some. I'm not going to say to me, but I know to some, it struck a chord to them.
Can I be bitch? Okay, thank you. Let's see. What did
That's fucking
this
funny.
Uh,
is Chris for $10 and says, what do you think of the McAlberts claiming they were sleeping as their excuse for not coming out? Don't you think Chloe Shirley should have been barking?
I think Chloe, I mean, this is how naive we were. Some of us actually thought that Chloe was rehomed, when I guess the term rehomed was went to a better place, right?
No, but we're talking about that morning. That morning at 6:30. Chloe was in that house.
I think, yeah, you're right. I think the dog would have been barking. And I honestly, if I was a homeowner and I saw all that activity going on outside, I would have come outside.
So it's unreal. You don't think you would have slept through that?
I wouldn't. I mean, I can't imagine sleeping through all of that and all the lights. I mean, I don't know. I'm just speculating. I don't know the positioning of the bedroom and how it's positioned per se, but I believe it's in the front, so you can actually see it. But I don't know that. I would speculate that. But if we had known that, then it would be clear to say that, okay, we should have been able to see the flashing lights and all the activity that's going on outside.
So this is Brian Albert's window right here. Okay, that's his bedroom window. It's the closest part to where John O'Keefe was found. And that's what I mean by going back and seeing the scene later on, the advantage to that. So we've kind of been over that. Thank you. Let's see. Danny sends $5 and says, no, Jennifer sends $5, says, Ronnie, would you disclose if you would ever do an interview with the Commonwealth if they were looking for a feedback on this case? I mean, I don't know. Would you disclose?
Yeah, I would disclose it. I mean, obviously I haven't signed any kind of non-disclosure statements, so I can disclose anything, but I have not.
All right, thank you. Danny sends $5 and says, thanks for being here, Ronnie. What did you and the other jurors think about Colin's pull up and bang bang videos? What'd you think of those?
Oh, God,
that shit.
Dude, I will say the only thing that was worse than that was him trying to say that he scraped up his knuckles. That whole story about how he got that on his hand, that was insane.
So it was very interesting that clearly he must be a boxer. and he has some anger issues. That's not very clear on whether that can be directly related to an injury to John O'Keefe. You know what I mean? And I wish if there was something there that we could prove, then that would have been easier.
Okay. Let's see. And I'm gonna so again, so many people are sending questions about like just like what'd you think about this? What'd you think about this? We can't go over everything, guys. I'm looking for unique questions. Like, so for instance, this one says, what about Jen's daughter saying Colin was there when John was? I mean, I don't know what you want me to say to that, guys. So thank you very much, Tara in Texas, for sending that. But again, they consider again, I don't know how many times I gotta say this. The rest of the jury said that's all a distraction. Done. Next one. Let's see. See, Finley sends $5. Says, did the jury have an opinion about Karen overall? We kind of went over that. Rachel sends $10. Says, did you find the sirens going off during testimonies humorous at all? And it happened all the time.
Yeah.
During the test, it was crazy how much.
Oh yeah, it happened all the time. It was kind of interesting, but sometimes we're wondering like, oh, they must be going to an emergency. What's going on? And then we would kind of pause so that.
That's literally what I think every time, and I feel like it's in every trial. Somehow you always hear sirens, and I always think, oh, there's an emergency.
Testimony can continue.
Yep. And I'm going to cut off your questions here. I'm just going to read the ones I got in Cash App. The ones that I see are definitely about jurors that we haven't asked yet. I'm just going to see some of these. Let's see. Okay. What did jurors think about Jen McKee? Okay, 227. Let's see. Did Bev come and talk to you? Did anyone believe John O'Keefe was killed in the house? Okay, we've been over all this. Okay. Okay, there's so many of these fucking questions. Like this. Guys, if we've asked the question, don't send in money asking the same question. It's a waste of your money.
By the way, for people who were asking about my brother, he's I think he just was chasing a flooding situation, and then he is going to be chasing the snow as well. That's happening soon. So for anyone who is interested in those.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to go over some of these on my own afterwards, but I just want to thank you for your time and you coming on here. I found this very
So that's it for that. After this, he sends Ronnie off to the rest of his evening or whatever, and then he does his Turtleboy thing. I think it might have been you, Twiz. Is he in Kentucky? He was in, where was he? Hold on. I asked him. He said yesterday, he said he was coming back from a storm chaser conference in Kansas. That was yesterday. And then I saw that he had a video of something about a flood somewhere. I think it popped up while I was streaming, so I didn't get to look at. I think it's some flood somewhere. And then that was a YouTube notification. And then he texted me chasing the snow Wednesday. So right now he's where is it? Yeah, there we go. From 2 hours ago, my brother posted on YouTube, his YouTube channel, stormsquad.net, flash flooding from levee failure. Obion, Tennessee. So right now he's in Tennessee. Right now he's in Tennessee. And then I guess tomorrow, or well, Wednesday, I don't really know where all he's going to go for the snow because it seems like a lot of places are getting it. Yeah, I don't think he goes all the way to Ireland, unfortunately. Who's JLR again? My brother's Daniel. You guys, I know some of you guys have already gone and checked out his channel, but he's amazing. I know Black Witter has watched. And when Black Witter was there, that was his very first time ever live streaming, because I remember that. Be nice. People can't help the names they're born with or given by other people as nicknames, Twiz. But everybody calls him Dan. I call him Mant, because that's what I used to call him when we were little kids. So anyway, but the video about the flooding, I don't even know what happened, but it looks like, what did it say? A levee broke or something in Tennessee. So he just posted that video like 2 hours ago. And, but yeah, he does go live when he can. I mean, tornadoes are his favorite thing. I mean, he's a professional. I mean, and oftentimes you guys too, just so you can be on the lookout, he will be his footage has been all over every single place that uses storm footage, but sometimes they'll also interview him and they'll have him come on and talk about storm. So just, if you ever see Dan Whitaker, you know, you might be like watching something about the weather and you could see him on there, but it has to be severe weather where you won't see him. You know, but yeah, he's amazing. Shout out to my brother, my little brother. And also shout out to my niece and nephew. You guys, I have to tell you this because I love my nephew and I adore him. And he just turned 7. I have to tell you this because I think this is amazing. Meg says yeah, he's on. I wouldn't be surprised.
It's and sometimes they'll just use his footage, but it'll say like on there, it'll be like footage provided by, I don't know if it says stormsquad.net. That's him. So yeah, but the story about my nephew. So my nephew had his first ski trip over like New Year's and stuff. And I was invited. I couldn't go. You guys remember when I was sick and I had laryngitis. So I was here waiting for my voice to return, and the rest of my family was skiing. Anyway, so it was the first time for my niece and nephew to ski. And I guess my nephew was snowboarding, not skiing. But anyway, but he had his little class or whatever. And, at the end, like my mom was there and she was like picking him up from the class and like, after like however many couple days, and like asked the instructor like how he did. And the instructor said to her, like, I've never, ever I've never met a kid like this. And my mom was like, yeah, like what happened? And then the instructor said, oh my God, sorry. The instructor said, that one day they finished their lesson, and my nephew says to her, like looks her in the face and like says to her, are you related to anyone by love? That's my nephew for you. Are you related to anyone by love? I think it is a common thing. Sort of like, I think there's other expressions. I think the expressions can vary like regionally, like how other things. Isn't it sweet? I know. Oh, that's cute. I didn't realize they were the same age as my nephew. That's insane. Right. And that's why it was crazy when it came out about, well, I don't know. Honestly, I'll tell you what, I trust what the Commonwealth says as far as I can, I don't know, do something else. Like, I mean, when that came out in that hearing, I was like, bullshit. Because you would have said that the first trial. Because this was the whole point of contention. It's like, Chloe doesn't exist then, but now she exists. Sorry. Or no, it's Vermont though. But yeah, I don't, like a lot of people were saying like, produce the dog and then we'll believe it. And I'm in that camp for sure. I had that. Are you talking about the one that just got posted today? Or at least I saw it posted today. It looked like it was the new. Yeah. I started watching that as I was doing other things around the house. I think I got almost done with it. I did. And actually, it's funny. I probably would have done that instead of this. Like I was actually thinking, oh, maybe I'll do the Karen Reed docs and then that interview. But then again, Fender requested this specifically. And so then I was like, well, I'll do this way. We can still watch it. We can, there's no statute of limitations, right? We can do that another time. But I did watch it. And I honestly, for me, I will just say, no offense to Karen Reed. The part for me that is the more interesting part is like the second half, I guess, when Alan Jackson, like, because that for me is more interesting. Like, talking about the different issues and just the stuff that's more related to the case and the legal process. And like I found that that was more intriguing to me than Karen, but no offense to her again. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons to think that. I mean, there's really no evidence again, it's like anything that would try to say that didn't happen is just so questionable because of who it's coming from. So, it's funny though, there was a part where, earlier in the interview where they're talking about how, like, I think Karen says it. She's like, I talk to Alan Jackson like 3 or 4 times a day. And I was like, oh my God, like, you guys, we all know that's excessive. Like, that's like, that's like beyond Sarah. That's like worse than Sarah Boone. Like Sarah Boone like wanted to talk to her attorneys like way too much, but it was like, I don't know, maybe once a week or something, you know what I mean? But like 3 or 4 times a day. And I understand that they're like, she's hired them, but still that's like not normal. Like I will be interested to see what people comment on, because that is, I can't fathom that. Like what, how do you have that much to talk about? And Alan Jackson says like, he'll wake up and he has like text messages from her or missed calls or whatever. And I'm like, oh no, I don't know. He was talking about it to try to show how involved she is. The question was about like, how involved is she in her case? And she's really a big part of it. But to me, I'm like, this sounds excessive to me. Like if it were me, if I were Karen, I would not, that seems like it's just too much. I don't know. Anyway, you thought of his wife with like hearing from her that much? That's interesting. I mean, that's not normal. And he's got other clients. You know what I mean? There can't possibly be that much talk. Like, again, once a week by most people's standards. And, you know, we can ask Denise too, but like I've heard other, you know, this came up a whole bunch with the Sarah Boone, right? Like once a week would be considered way more than is usually necessary or typical. Like, so 3 to 4 times a day. It's like first thing when you wake up, last thing when you go to bed. It's like, Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? Like, wow. Oh, I don't even know about the rumors. I've not heard anything about that because, you know, brawls. So I don't know. But I do have to go do a couple things before the next live stream. I'm super excited, you guys, for this live stream. I can't wait to show you guys this video. Oh man, this is so interesting. There's a lot of really good points that come up that we're gonna talk about with related to the rose petal trial, and we're gonna get the inside scoop. There's a lot of things that happened in the courtroom that we didn't know about, and we're gonna learn those today as well. And then we are going to we're going to go through some of these documents. Again, I really tried to find the indictment for Bradley Post, but I think it's just not available because of what it contains. I mean, I couldn't even find a thing that says it exists, but it's sealed. But anyway, I mean, I might keep looking for it, but all the civil documents are available. And there's like a fuck ton of them. Oh, I'm sure they're not. There's no way. I wouldn't even concern yourself with it. There's no way. Alan Jackson would never do that. Are you kidding me? No. Disbarred. Like it's too much to lose. People like y'all, those ABA model rules, we've looked at them just even here recently. The standards that these attorneys have to live by, even in their daily life, are really, really, really high. Even when they're not pertaining to their clients, but when it pertains to their clients, I mean, it's just, you can't get away with that shit. And you would never do it. You would never jeopardize. Only Alex Murdaugh would do this, would jeopardize his career as a lawyer to do dumb shit. Like, seriously, it would never happen. It would never happen. Never happen. Absolutely never happen. I would bet my violin and my life and Glenn on it. Shout out to Glenn. I mean, yeah, it's like they are held to a standard, honestly, that is unusual. Like politicians, the president, people get away with all kinds of stuff. Lawyers really don't. I mean, again, that's why Alex Murdaugh is like an anomaly there with how, I mean, he didn't get away with it in the end, but he did temporarily. And like Tom Girardi, but like really, it's not, and the thing is, remember, if you're an attorney and you just simply have knowledge of another attorney breaking one of those rules, and remember, it doesn't, the standards, it doesn't take much to break those rules because the ethics are so important, right? To the profession, to the maintaining the integrity of the profession. So if you just simply see that somebody else is doing one of those things, you will get in trouble. One of your ethical duties that you can get in trouble for is not reporting it. It's not just like you should or whatever. It's like, if you don't, you will get in trouble. So, I mean, it's just, they really take it so serious. Like, for example, when I got my paralegal certificate, I kid you not, the first long portion of that entire course was literally just the ethics. There's Denise chiming in. It was just the ethics. Because for the paralegal course that I took, you know, we studied all of the same, ethics that they use for the attorneys, right? There's the ABA. What's the other one? The other acronym? I can't remember it right now, Denise, but there's the ABA, obviously, but then there's another one. What is it? Anyway, but then when you're a paralegal, there's also two others that apply that are specific to paralegals, but you have to learn all of them. So we learned the paralegal ones and the attorney ones. And they're very similar, but like, you know, and they like, honestly, that was it really stuck with me, even though I already knew this stuff was important. The amount of time that was spent on that was like, holy fuck. Like it's like oxygen. It's like, literally, it's like, if nothing else, you have to do this. So that's why it's such a big deal. And so that's, again, I mean, Denise, I don't know if you heard this. I guess there's a rumor about something happening with Alan Jackson and Karen Reed. I'm just like, there's just no fucking way. Nope. Again, what did I bet? I bet my violin. I bet my life. I bet something else. And then I know I said I bet Glenn as well, because you know Glenn. So I'm trying to remember the other one, some other acronym. But anywho, but you guys come back here in like 50 minutes for the rose petal. It's gonna be amazing. Oh yeah, Denise, every time we have to do continuing ed, right? CEDs, right? It's ethics for, yep. It is, yep. And you know, and that's the thing, right? Because it's like, people need to be able to feel like they can trust their attorney, right? Again, like I always say, it is the only type of relationship where it goes beyond marriage. Marriage is until death do you we part. And then with your attorney-client privilege is after death. We never part. Past death. So it's stronger than marriage. So it's like the strongest, what would you say? It's like the most sacred bond there is, in a way, or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? Like crazy, right? So people have to be able to trust their attorneys, right? So anywho, Denise, do you want to ease my brain by helping me remember the other acronym I can't remember, so I don't have to like drive myself crazy? I guess I could just look it up. I'll probably remember it as soon as I stop trying to. But the other one besides the ABA model rules, just maybe Google it. So squirrely. I'm like, oh, it's gonna drive me crazy. I'm trying to find it online. I'm not finding it. Help. You know, I wonder if maybe it was a North Carolina specific thing. It might have been. What came out today was a new interview, a full-length interview with Karen Reed and Alan Jackson. Yeah, okay. So that's so funny. Jinx, because I bet it was a North Carolina specific. Yep, that would make sense. Yep. So, okay, guys, everybody come back for the next stream. Y'all, it's going to be super, super interesting. And love you guys. Also, again, shout out to Turtleboy, shout out to Ronnie. Awesome interview. It was very insightful, very, it just a lot. I just was great. So, and thank you for Fender for also recommending that we watch this. So I will see you guys here soon, and I'll go ahead and roll the outro.